Hello, everyone, and welcome. Welcome to my channel. And we've got special guest JL Warren. How's it going, JL?
I'm good. Everything is going good. Thank you.
All
Thank
right,
you.
excellent. Yeah, thanks for coming on.
Absolutely, my
We
pleasure. It's been a while
yeah,
since you've been live. You've been busy.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Life gets in the way sometimes. Um, but yeah, so we've talked on streams multiple times, many times.
Uh
We've
huh.
had lots of discussions, but you have never been on my channel, and I have never been on your channel.
This is true. I have not had you on Bridge the Divide, and I have
Yeah,
yet to be over here. I like it. It's nice. Nice. It's clean.
yeah,
It's pretty good
yep,
over
yep.
here.
Yeah, it's fairly low mileage. Yeah, so great. We're going to get into the Halloween spirit. I know you've been doing that on your channel a bit. You've got some things going on over there that we'll probably talk about. Um, and yeah, so let's say hello to people in the chat. Of course, there is the lovely and amazing Casey the Cannibal, my special, my special one. Um,
ah,
Thank you for being with us. We got Doctor Who. He's a big fan of mine, I guess. So I appreciate that, Doctor Who. We've got Real CY Genus.
real sickness.
That's the thing I do. I mispronounce people's names.
Oh, gotcha. Sorry.
um, and now that you explained the joke, though,
Mm.
we've got Aaron Reese, who shows up a lot. Thanks for joining. We got Charlie Welch in the house.
The only man on the internet you never
Awesome.
make a bet with.
And Commander Darklight. All right.
Oh.
So we got some people joining us tonight, which is excellent. Because we're going to talk about some horror. We're going to get, like I said, we're going to get into the Halloween spirit, maybe get some spooks on, and we're going to pick JL's mind a bit. Because JL, I think it's fair to say that you were a little something of a horror fan, are you not?
Yeah, I would say I think you could classify me as a fan of the horror genre. You
Excellent.
know, in all of its mediums. I think yeah, I'm pretty sure. Yeah.
All right, yeah, we're gonna dig into that a little bit more. Now, most people know. I'm guessing probably pretty much everyone knows that you're involved with a certain podcast, but we're just gonna talk a little bit about that anyway, just to make sure anyone who might stumble upon this and doesn't know, you co-host a podcast called Week in Horror. You want to
Yes.
tell us a little bit about it?
Yes, absolutely. There's a story there. So Prime Red just brought up. I am one of the co-hosts on a podcast called Week in Horror, and basically it's every week at Wednesday, 7 p.m. Central on YouTube.com/Week in Horror, and the where we essentially me and my filmmaker friends, because we all work in the industry as directors, actors, writers, producers, and the like. We deep dive the horror films that released that week in horror history. So we find like 4 films that came out that week, and then we don't review. It's not really a review show, but we dive them. We talk like what was going on behind the scenes, what's going on here, how it reflects, how like society kind of reflects through it, and just do big deep dives on these particular movies. We also do like news updates, and we have bloodbath debates, and just a big place for horror nerds is what it is. And we are currently in our 4th season.
Excellent.
Which I'm crazy excited about. And of course, I'm there co-hosting, or I co-host it. So the other hosts are Eugene and Alex and Johnny O from the Plot Hole. Many of you know from the Plot Hole, and of course our newest guy Aaron Reese, who's there in the chat. He's one of our amazing hosts. And
Very
of course,
nice.
my lovely wife Angela, who does all the editing and makes us all sound excellent. For whenever because we record the show early, and then on the following Sunday is when it goes live to all the podcast sites, so Google and Apple and Spotify and all that. But yeah, it was wild for for anybody out there who like is interested in possibly podcasting and doing that. I can tell you, the whole thing was pretty much born out of like a need to do something creative, and I'd left my job and the soul sucking place that I was working for, and I needed to do something creative because for like 6.5 years, all I was doing was working, and I had no life, and other than my vacation time, and that was always like this, but I had no social life. I had nothing outside of my job. And so I didn't get to do any stage, didn't get to do any film, didn't get to audition anytime. I didn't get to do anything creative. And so I got out of there and I got my life back, and I was like, I need to do something. So the first thing I did is I wrote my horror novella, which many of you may have heard because I played an audio excerpt of it. But then I was like, you know what? I'm going to start doing some work again. So I got together with a friend. I met Eugene, one of my co-hosts, on a 48-hour film project, and we just clicked. And then after that, I came up with the ideas like, I want to do a podcast, and called up Eugene, and I called up an old coworker of mine, Alex, who I worked with at that soul-sucking job because he had left as well. And we were like, you know what? Let's take a stab at this. Why not? And this was literally at the tail end of 2019. And we know what 2020 was bringing. So we were like so it's like we needed something creative, right? So we started to buckle down and we said, let's do this. Let's talk about scary movies. Why not? So we started doing a podcast, and it was really bad. It was really, really bad at the start, and because we didn't know what we were doing. Audio-wise, video, any of that stuff, and it was just terrible. So there's actually a couple episodes out there that are archived that you'll likely never hear because they were just that terrible.
Sure.
And so, but eventually, we kept plugging away. Every week, put together an episode. We started finding a structure, finding a rhythm. We eventually got the momentum going. People started listening, and we eventually just got better and better and better. And eventually got large enough, and schedules and things started to pick up for us, creative wise. And so we brought Johnny O in. Yeah. Because I met Johnny O through Team Skeptic and just hit it off. Johnny O came in and was just absolutely amazing. Brought his brought all of his know-how. He joined the crew, and then we started. Once we started to really get this momentum going, all of a sudden, creative things started blowing up for people, and people's schedules got really busy. So then we needed to bring in somebody else, and Aaron Reese joined the show, whose knowledge is as good as all of ours. He's got his own channel, Media Macabre, or Media Macabre. But and so now it just kind of blew up into things. So. It's what's been amazing is that anybody who's ever been interested in doing a podcast, who would like to do one, all you really need is just the effort. Just keep putting that effort forward. Just keep churning something out. As long as you're sorry, I hit my mic. As long as you're talking about what you love, and what you really, really, if you have a subject that you want to talk about, you can talk about that, and you will find an audience because there are other people out there that love it as much as you do, and so you just keep. You just keep putting it out. Just keep putting it out, and eventually you'll find your audience. But that's the beauty of it. Yeah. But that's the beauty of it, And it's because of not only Charlie Welch and Commander Darklight and other people in the chat that I see that have Cindy Sue and you and I see a bunch of them there who have supported our show from damn near the beginning. And said, these guys, not only do they know what they're talking about, but they really, really love what they talk about. And so that support right there has been, instrumental into our success today. And the things we've been able to do because, like I said, you find your audience, you keep plugging it away. So I would say, if you love horror movies, come over and check us out and hang out during the live stream or check us out wherever you listen to podcasts. But also take the example, if you want to do a podcast, and you love talking about something, you can do it too. It just takes effort and time. And of course, if you have any questions about, what to go through, so maybe you can, bypass some of the missteps that we made in the beginning, I'm always happy to answer questions about that. But like I said, this is a horror genre stream. I don't want to take away from you, but it's been an amazing ride, and it's led to film opportunities for us. It's led to writing opportunities for us. It's given a boost to all of our channels, and it's just been. The community behind it is just so utterly amazing. We wouldn't be where we are if it wasn't for the community. So, because it's been a fucking ride. It really has been.
Excellent. Yeah. All right. That's great, JL. So tell me a little bit. How did JL Warren get into horror in the first place? What drew you, as a young man into the world of horror?
Oh man. So we may get a little bit personal here. So,
go as far as you want, though. You don't.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I'm just trying to find a place. I'm trying to find where to start. So I've always been drawn to the horror genre, to the scary genre. And everybody's got their reasons for why they love the genre in and of itself. And the genre is important. The genre is probably in my eyes the most important genre of all the genres of entertainment, or the genres of storytelling, because that's essentially what entertainment is. It's storytelling. It's telling a story. We identify with the characters. We're able to internalize the struggle and whatever, the hero's journey or whatever. And then we are able to, through that internalization, we can begin to kind of reconcile maybe feelings or stuff in our lives that are difficult to articulate and difficult to kind of put into words, and that we can kind of like churn through. It's almost like therapy. There is a catharsis in any kind of entertainment or storytelling, because we see ourselves in their shoes. Well-written stories allow the people who are listening or the people who are watching to slip into those shoes and see themselves in situations, and then we can kind of vicariously deal with stuff. The horror genre itself is so important, and why every other genre drafts off of it is because, one, it's one of the oldest genres. It's the things that go bump in the night. It's the scary stuff. It's the stuff in the shadows that you don't see. It's the things that when we were just primitive human beings sitting around huddled around a campfire trying to stay warm, that we were worried about the things that we didn't see. These are the stories that we've been telling ourselves since, time immemorial. And so that's why everything else kind of drafts off of it. It's always about the unknown and reconciling the unknown, reconciling uncertainty. And so the horror genre, it has something for every single person out there, whether it's funny horror or it's psychological horror or it's body horror or it's splatter horror or whatever. Everybody's got their thing. Yes, Aaron Reese brings it up. It is a safe space to explore the shit that terrifies us, where we can deal with that and internalize it, compartmentalize it, and figure it out. Now, in my life has been quite charmed in many respects, and I've had my struggles in my personal life, but I myself, used to be like, when I was growing up, it was kind of a dark time for me. I was a really, really overweight kid. I was bullied a lot, and I didn't really have a lot of safe spaces other than my house. My sexuality kind of like put me at odds, I think, with my dad, even though my dad didn't know what I was. And so things sometimes got dark emotionally for me. So I needed a place where I needed something that I could kind of pour myself into. And it was the first time I'd ever seen like a legitimate horror film. And it was going all the way back, I think, one of the very first movies I ever remember seeing in theaters was Ghostbusters. And nice. It was and I know that's a comedy. We look at it, we laugh now, but obviously when that came out, it was like 1982, and when I saw that, 1984. Sorry, it was 1984, and then same year I saw Gremlins, and so it was that fear was a catharsis. That that expression of being afraid of the librarian scene particularly is what sits with me, and so at the very beginning of the movie. And so that enabled me to kind of oh wow, that I can expel this by feeling that and deal with this. So horror became this like kind of secure area that nobody could mess with. It was something that I loved, that I could love and pour myself into. That kind of led to just eating up every movie that I could find, no matter what what area in the genre. That led to my art, when I was a young kid, like drawing and doodling, stuff like this, and that led to my writing. And so it's always been with me since an early age. Then the first like legit horror film I remember watching, I think, was Aliens, which then led to Alien when I found out it was a sequel. And then it was pretty much all downhill from there. I've loved it so much because I desperately needed that catharsis in my life, and I needed that expression in my life so that I could deal with these things. And then I really took a penchant towards psychological horror, because psychological horror deals with the stuff that we really don't want to deal with on a daily basis. So whether it's motivations, or whether it's why bad stuff happens to good people, or bad stuff happens to me when I don't deserve it, or, miscarriages of justice, and, just dealing with these things, I needed that in my life. And it became an outlet. And so I was like, I'm going to pour into it what I'm getting out of it. And so, there you go. And, this is pretty much what it was. So early films, and then kind of led to literature, and then so on and so forth from there. So just, kind of like, we all find our little places,
Yeah, I definitely understand that. And, of course, you use the horror genre to work out some stuff that you need to work out in your writing and things like that.
Right.
You've done a little bit of directing, like
Mhm.
independent film directing as well, and some acting. Um, and your book, your short story compilation, Beach Streets Chronicles,
The Beach Bay Chronicles, yeah.
or Beach Bay Chronicles. Yes,
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Have you gotten any further on maybe publishing that or anything like that?
Not yet, not yet. And
No.
I still kind of go and I read through it every couple of days, and I kind of like tweak some things here and there, like make little changes. Like maybe this word works better than this one, so I'm kind of like just kind of like nitpicking at it right now and being
Sure.
like, whatever. But I would be ready to stick in somebody's hands if somebody wanted to read it. But that I discovered after I wrote it, and then I kind of like gave it to my friends to kind of like beta read, to be like, like beta test it. So I was kind of beta testing first I alpha tested it with my wife and again had her read. She said, these concepts are really good. You need to flesh them out. It's like, great. So then I beta tested it amongst my circle of friends, had everybody read it, and they all came back with really positive feedback and some good critical feedback and things I needed to work on. And so I just kept working and putting it together until eventually I had this collection of short stories that I put together into this novella. But then I found out swiftly after that, this is a writing, that is actually a really hard place to break into. It's not like podcasting. It's not like screenplaying, because with screenplays, it's all about getting your screenplay into the right hands.
Sure.
That's pretty much all it is. And of course, if you have contacts in the industry, then that's actually kind of easy because you know who to talk to. You know people that know people. And so it's just like, and if you have friends, you can be like, hey, would you mind like kind of like sliding this over to this person here, or greasing the wheels. That's actually kind of easy because there's a lot of people in the industry who are willing to help each other out because, a rising tide lifts all boats. But literature is different. Like writing is hard. So it's either number one, it's publish or perish. And two, you either self-publish or you find a publisher who will pick your stuff up, find an editor who likes your work and they'll edit it, and then you find a publisher who will take it. And that's really hard. And self-publishing is also really expensive unless you want to put it online. And then online, you're not really going to make anything off of it. You're going to need like millions of readers in order to justify, justify that. So, because the people who host it, like Amazon, they're going to take the vast majority of your money. So it's kind of like you kind of hit like a damned if you do, damned if you don't kind of situation. So it's been difficult, but hopefully eventually a publisher will want to read it. It's also niche horror, because it's cosmic horror, it's Lovecraftian inspired. So it may not be for everybody, but maybe one day, fingers crossed.
Yeah.
It would be cool as hell,
Yeah, I was actually one of the people you sent the book out, so I've had the privilege of reading it. It's pretty good. There's some good stuff in it that people should read.
Thank you.
And
appreciate that.
Yeah. I hope I gave you some feedback and suggestions, and I hope that might have helped out a little bit.
It did, yes. Everybody's feedback has been fantastic who've been able to sit down, because I know asking someone to like read a manuscript is just like, the screenplay is one thing. Screenplays read pretty quick, but asking someone to like read a manuscript is difficult. It's time consuming. You got to sit down. You have to sit down. You'll be distracted, especially when they want feedback. And that's an effort, and it's difficult to do that because it's kind of putting an imposition on them. But the people who give me feedback have been phenomenal, and helped me to improve it, to maybe get to the point where maybe other people might want to read it one day. I don't know.
I think someone thinks you're Santa, though. No, give us a ho ho ho.
Ho ho ho.
There we go. Nice. Yeah. Well, we're not there yet. We're still approaching.
It's time
Halloween.
for some seasons beatings.
Oh no! Is that from the new
yes,
Violent
Night.
Violent Night.
Actually, it's more of an action movie, but it's David Harbour. David Harbour's amazing, so I would say. But I just like some of the lines there are fantastic. But it's only because David Harbour's playing. Is one of my favorite. He's currently one of my favorite actors, and he got kind of ripped off for He got ripped off for Hellboy because the script was shit and it was just garbage. But obviously Stranger Things, and I've seen him in a bunch of other things when he was younger, before he really hit it with Stranger Things. And of course, I'm glad that he's really taken off now because he's a badass actor. I like him.
So, what is your favorite form of horror media? Would you say it's movies, or do you even have a favorite horror media?
So
horror
I,
movies?
I spend most of my time obviously with horror films because I got Week in Horror and I got to watch them all the time. And if I find one that I really like, I'll typically watch it like 3 or 4 times, sometimes in a row, just so I can pick up on little details and I kind of commit it to I like commit things about it to memory. And I'll research the ones that I really really love. But I would say my number one, I'll always be drawn to horror literature. It's always going to be books because the first horror books I ever got my hands on when I was probably 8. I was probably 8 or 9. No, it was back. It was back when I was growing up in California. So yeah, it would probably be probably in between the ages of 7 and 9, and that was my mom's copies of Stephen King and my mom's copies of Dean Koontz. So my mother is a big fan of of thrillers and horror novels, and so she would read them and then get done with them, and then they'd go up on the shelf. And so I just started picking them up and started reading them myself. Now I didn't tell her because she probably wouldn't want me reading some of the stuff that she read, but some of that stuff was very inspirational. So like Koontz and King led to others that led to like Edgar Allan Poe and H.P. Lovecraft and Richard Chambers and a number of other like horror authors, and that led to other like in that then once you start getting a real handle or you can really kind of grasp those stories, then you start seeing those same tropes and the same elements showing up in the films that you're watching or sometimes even in the the anime you're watching or the whatever. So that's when I kind of realized how big this kind of is and how these currents run very very deep. And so, but yeah, I would have to say my first real love for the horror genre is always going to be literature because stories. There's something about reading that's always going to be different from watching movies. Because movies allow you to kind of like this, you can kind of dissociate and you're engrossed in the movie, especially in the theater setting. But something about books because you can generate everything in your mind, and you don't have to like the camera angles or how things are viewed. You're watching it through the protagonist's eyes, or you're watching it through like the kind of like the God perspective. So depending upon if it's first person, third person, or whatever, but that's the beauty of it is essentially reading the book. I can make it all up in here, and I can be at any point. I'm like the ultimate director in that respect, and so I'll always have that because some of the books I've gotten lost into. I remember like I think one of the scariest ones was. I got into a long time ago. There was, I think it may still be around, is the Stephen King Book Club, and every month you paid a subscription fee, and then every month they would send you a new Stephen King book hardcover, and so I got a bunch of different ones, but then all of a sudden one month The Shining showed up, and I remember sitting down. Yeah, I remember sitting down with a hardcover copy of The Shining. And I sat down. It was like 9 o'clock at night, and I went in my room, and I sat down, and I'm just gonna read this before I go to bed. And I could not stop, and I read the entire thing in one sitting.
Wow!
And because it was just gripping, and it was terrifying. By the time I was done with that, I was kind of like, oh, like noises, like you're freaking out, stuff like this. But because that book was fucking scary, and so I read The Shining cover to cover in one sitting, and that was like, I want to do this. This is what I want to like. That's how I knew I was. I think probably at that moment, and I think I was probably like 13. Maybe I was 13 or 14 years old. I think at that moment I knew I was going to be a writer. It's like I am going to write stories that do this for people, that literally have them sitting on the edge of their seat, or like or when they get done reading it, it's going to sit with them for like days after. The imagery is just going to be so pervasive, and I knew I was going to do it from that point on. And so from then on, it was just like writing, and started like little short stories, and then so on and so forth. So it's always going to be literature because there's just something about the written word, a book in your hands.
Yeah, it's the thing about books, because in horror movies. It's oftentimes the stuff that you don't see that is the scariest, and that's like what the stories are. It's all stuff you don't see. It's all stuff that you are coming up with in your head as far as like details and stuff like that. So,
to answer Stephen Alley's question, I would consider Andromeda Strain, early Michael Crichton stuff. I would consider Andromeda Strain to be sci-fi horror because of the apocalyptic elements, and that could be horrific to some people. So I would say, but definitely because it centers around like space stuff. I would say that would be a sci-fi horror, and I consider Jurassic Park more of a sci-fi thriller, because we knew that because essentially with the Andromeda Strain, you never really knew what the outcome of this was going to be. So it's always kind of like, what could possibly happen, and coming out of the end of this. So that puts that horror element, because that's that uncertainty. With Jurassic Park, it's more stabilized. You have the sci-fi element, which is the genetically recreating dinosaurs, but then that dinosaurs are extraordinarily dangerous. What's going to happen here because the setup is there. That eventually greed is going to destroy everything, and then of course ultimately the dinosaurs are going to wind up killing most everybody. So that's the expectation. That it's not sustainable. So the dinosaurs are going to kill people. It's all a matter of like, well, who's going to die and how bad is it going to be? Is Hammond going to get what he deserves? Is Nedry going to get what he deserves? What's going to go down? So that one, because you kind of understand, you kind of have like a grander hold on it. There's very little uncertainty. And so from there, it's kind of like, I would say it's more of a thriller, because it's all about the anticipation instead of the uncertainty of what's going to happen. You kind of anticipate it. People are going to die. You just don't know how, and you don't know when. So you're kind of like, oh, what's going to happen? I consider that kind of thriller genre.
It's very much a cautionary tale, Jurassic Park.
Yes.
About the dangers of runaway
it's intriguing. It's kind of like the dangers of capitalizing on what we need to survive, which is nature, and then taking that and then twisting it to make money and profit into like this with no respect whatsoever for it. So it's basically abusing what we need to survive, which is nature, trying to find truths out of it, and then realizing we've destroyed it or we've destroyed ourselves. So, it's about bad science, it's about greed, it's about, essentially like losing sight of it. And I loved what Crichton did with it. The book is obviously worlds different from the movie, because the movie hit all the major points, but there's so much, going on in the book. And I loved Jurassic Park. I read it after I saw the movie. And then, of course, I read Lost World before I saw the movie. And Lost World was kind of boring because he was forced to write that book, so they could justify a second film. And you could tell in the writing that he really was. He's like, I really don't want to write this, but nonetheless, the first Jurassic Park was really solid, but definitely a thriller. The unexpected. There's the feeling of anticipation. This is not going to end up well. You just don't know exactly how. So it's kind of the build that you're waiting for. Like, what's the payoff going to be? With the Andromeda Strain, there was a level of uncertainty. You don't know how because this could go multiple ways. So you're left kind of trying to think of it as like, well, it could play out this way, it could play out that way, but you don't really know. That level of uncertainty creates fear, especially in apocalyptic scenarios. Whereas with Jurassic Park, it's on an island. It's not like the dinosaurs are going to blow up the Earth. It's not like they're going to kill everyone on the Earth. So, yeah.
Although they might in the next one. Who knows?
Hopefully we have no more Jurassic Park movies or Jurassic World movies, because that franchise has been milked to death.
That's not going to happen. But how do you respond to this scurrilous accusation from Mr. Johnny the O? The jail doesn't read.
I don't read. It's funny. I mean, obviously, it's obviously not true. But I think hopefully there's not going to be more Johnny. Hopefully there won't be. But I oftentimes I try to make room to read as much as I can. I'm so freaking busy with Week in Horror and my own personal channel and all the stuff going on, the projects that we have going that Week in Horror has led to, the writing gigs that it has led to. And not to, there's so much stuff going on in my personal life. It's difficult to find time to sit down and read a book. Like, I recently got this really sweet copy of The King in Yellow by Richard Chambers. And I know I have another copy sitting somewhere, but I couldn't find it. It's probably in the garage in storage. But I got this copy, and I have it sitting here on my desk, staring at me, reminding me that I need to sit down and freaking read it, because I haven't read it in a long time and I want to read it again. That's why Lovecraft is up there on the wall. Lovecraft's up there on the wall to look over my shoulder and be like, you should be writing, or you should be reading, you should be doing something as like an author or a writer or something of that nature. So, eventually. And no, I think Congo was the gorilla one, the one with the gorillas and the protecting the diamonds.
Congo.
So, Stephen Albers. Oh yeah, the movie was just awful. Although I will say this, Tim Curry was quite enjoyable in that movie.
Well, Tim
Everybody else
Curry's
is gonna,
always enjoyable.
yeah. Tim Curry's amazing. Congo was the one about the gorilla. Yeah, Prey was the one about the nanobots. But yeah, the book was okay. Congo was all right. I love the way he wrote Amy, but Lovecraft is in no moral place to tell anyone what to do. This is true. That's the one thing. It's kind of hard because he was kind of he was kind of a dick. He was kind of an asshole. He was a xenophobic, racist, sickly recluse that kind of hated everything about his own life and he hated his own writing, But that it worked out for everybody because he didn't like what he wrote, and so he didn't think it had any worth. So he pretty much just said, "It's just out there. It's just put out there in the world. Just do your thing." And so people have been able to add to his mythos and take inspiration from it and reference his books, free. It's free. You don't have to do anything for it. It's just literally just there. It's okay, great. So I can write Lovecraftian horror and take elements from what he wrote and apply them here, just like Chambers did with his book. I can do that because Lovecraft felt his work had no value, and it's just wild, And but yeah, he's not a good person. But his art was, and while if you look at it critically, look at it like a technical thing, he wasn't even that great of a writer. But it's what he invokes and the emotional gauntlet that you run through with every one of his stories and the questions he asks. Those are what are important. So you can kind of forgive the playing with words and making up words in order, to kind of describe things, because he had his own kind of language. But that's why it's cosmic horror, and that's why it's weird horror. That's why the very first time he was ever published was in a weird horror magazine. So, yeah, it comes down to it. It's one of the most influential writers of our time, because we wouldn't have Kuntz, we wouldn't have King, we wouldn't have Carpenter, so many people. And then, of course, the people that they inspire. First of all, we wouldn't have Edgar Allan Poe. And then after that, we wouldn't have Stephen King. And after that, we wouldn't have, the people who King is inspired. And then John Carpenter, as a filmmaker, we wouldn't have anything that he, the inspiration from him, all because of this one lonely, silly, reclusive dude in freaking Rhode Island, Providence, Rhode Island, who was so terrified of the world that he didn't want to leave his place. And so he sat down and just wrote all the time.
Yeah. Yeah, and Casey, she says Tim Curry is enjoyable in anything, which is true. And true. Tim Curry, contrary to popular belief, he did not die. He finally found his escape into space.
I love Curry. Everything he's done, I absolutely love him in. I think the first time I ever saw Tim Curry was the It miniseries, because I saw that before I ever saw Legend. And then, obviously, him in Legend as Darkness was fantastic. Rocky Horror Picture Show. And then all the little stuff that he's done, when he was he was the friggin', the manager, the hotel manager in Home Alone 2. Or he was the third in command of the Russian sub in Hunt for Red October.
Yeah, he was the doctor. He was the chief medical officer.
Yeah, chief medical officer. And then he was the voice of Hexus. In Fern Gully. It's amazing, all the little things, and he's actually one of my big inspirations.
And you don't care that even though he's supposed to be a Russian, just like Sean Connery, does not speak in a Russian accent. Although, actually, I should clarify, Sean Connery in Hunt for October is Ukrainian. So they made that distinction in the movie as well.
Aaron Reeves brings up, interesting results. The Call of Cthulhu paper RPG is a campaign that focuses, they like that. But we wouldn't have any of this stuff. So much RPG, so many films, so many books, so much everything stemmed from, and it's wild. And this is what's really, really cool, is that, and this is why reading is fundamental, but this is why reading is why books are so important, is because none of this that we have today and we enjoy today would be possible if it were not for H.P. Lovecraft, for Howard Philip Lovecraft's grandfather. Because Howard Philip Lovecraft's grandfather was also a bit of a reclusive kind of dick. But one thing he did was he amassed a giant library that just for his own personal use. So he had this massive library that he had stashed. It wasn't even really like a library with everything's on shelves, but he just this massive collection of books that he just like gotten for himself, and it was all kinds of stuff. It was like science fiction, and it was weird stuff, and it was horror, and all kinds of like whatever. And he basically like stashed it away in his house. And years later, after his grandfather has died, little HP comes along, and being kind of a sickly kid, not really living in the house, kind of like an outsider, discovers his grandfather's library. And thus from that, and from an early age, and his imagination working, is where we get all of the stuff that he wrote about. Because that was his escape.
Sure.
Was those books that he just discovered hidden away in his grandfather's house. And so from there, just from one kid finding this stuff, from this one dude who was hoarding out all these books, bam. And then all of a sudden, an entire, literally a subgenre was born. And so that's the beauty of it. That's why it's so absolutely. That's why I love this genre so much. And it's
Stephen Ellie makes a good point. Books lay it out for your brain, movies lay it out for your eyes, and short attention span. Sure.
I would half agree. Books do lay it out for your brain, and allow you kind of like a more interactive affiliation with the story itself, because you're conjuring everything in your mind, in your mind's eye. My apologies to anybody out there who suffers from aphantasia, because they don't have a mind's eye to be able to do that. But that's essentially what you get. With movies, it really depends upon the writer. That's why the writing is so important, because there is some movies that is like literally short attention span, fast jump cut, whatever. But
that's these paranormal activity movies. And
but there are some films out there. There have been it's only a handful, but there have been a handful of films out there that have sat with me for days, sometimes weeks at a time, where my mind keeps going back to what I saw and what I experienced and what I internalized from that. Aspects of the story, little tiny details. One that came across was one with actor Tim. It was a British horror film with Jim Sturgis and Tony Spall, and it was a movie called Heartless. And it wasn't a big thing like this, but I watched that movie, and that sucker haunted me for days.
Wow.
Because the writing was so powerful. And so occasionally you get those ones, and then they sit with you. It's few and far between, but they do occur.
Yeah, what are some of these other movies that really stuck with you? That have like made you think, and like you can't stop thinking about it for days. Just like, wow, what was that?
Oh, so some that have affected me in different ways. So as far as like from an emotional or psychological perspective, actually from an emotional perspective, I'd say Heartless is number one. That one sat with me for a long time because it was a horror story, but an aspect of the horror story was a relationship with the guy with his dad, and the main character, Jim Sturgis' character, lost his dad at an early age, and he himself was a bit of a recluse, and he was kind of shunned because he's got this big like birthmark on his face, and he's withdrawn and everything, and he's a photographer, he lives through his camera, and so the relationship between him and his dad and the things unsaid that just haunted me, and of course in this horror scenario that the character himself creates for himself. That haunted me for a long time. There's been a couple of body horrors that really, really disturbed me and just kind of like hung around. I think the only time I've ever had a visceral reaction, like one that made me sick, was Peter Jackson's Dead Alive. That actually like physically, because it was the only movie I've ever watched that physically made me ill. Right, I thought I would like my body just compulsively was like, I almost I felt like I was gonna throw up. He's the only director who's ever been able to pull that off with me, and I've watched some really horrific shit. There's been some Japanese horror, some Korean horror. There was the Happiness of the Kataguris really stuck with me for a while because that one was so psychologically messed up, and so yeah, I mean the ones that sit with you. I think. Another good one would be Black Mountain Side was really, really haunting because of the cosmic horror, and it was really well. And that was exceptionally well done. As far as some old ones goes, is like because it can go back to classic horror. Because if you look at stuff like you can go with the big ones. I would say Exorcist 3 really stuck with me for a while, for a good long while. And God, I could go on and on about that, about the ones that just
more than Exorcist, more than the first Exorcist.
More than the first one, yeah, because
Wow.
the first one, the third one, Exorcist 3 is magnificent. Ignore 2. You can watch 1 and 3 and you'll be just fine. Exorcist 2, The Heretic, was just boring. But Exorcist 3 had the cinematography on that was chilling, and the way essentially the way the story is framed through the lens, the way the camera works, and the things done with the camera is intentionally designed to keep you off balance and kind of like, it's like, well, that's weird, because the camera does things kind of opposite what you would totally expect. Like the biggest jump scare, one of the biggest jump scares I've ever had that really freaked me out was in Exorcist 3, and that's because the setup for the jump scare was actually done in reverse of what you normally would expect. So with jump scares, you typically have a lull to a sound cue to the quick reveal, and typically in your face. So it's like watching TikTok videos where all of a sudden it's like, blah, it's kind of like that. But with Exorcist 3, they did it all in reverse. The camera was pulling back. The lull didn't lead to a big spike, and then all of a sudden you get the visual, then you get the spike. It's not like, duh, but it was after you'd already jumped into it. So it was like, what? And then before your brain can realize what you're seeing, blam, you realize something's bad. And then by that point, literally it was like 12 frames. And then by that point, it's already passed. And then you're like, what the hell was that? It's like you knew you just saw something horrible, but you're not sure really what it was. And so that was scary because they chose to do something different that was unexpected. And that was the beauty of Exorcist 3. It was really, really smart. And I can't think of anybody who sees that for the first. We recommended it to somebody who was listening to Week in Horror, and they were asking us like, what, like jump scare, like what's the worst jump scare you ever had? I think we recommended Exorcist 3, and I think they went and watched it, and I don't think we've heard from them again. So because that shit was scary. Wow. And that's the yes, Aaron Reese, the scissors, the big things, the scissors. Oof.
Hello, Angela Rivera.
Hey, Angel.
All right, excellent. Okay, so talking about horror movies, do you feel that there was one particular genre that really nailed? One particular decade that really nailed the horror movies, or do you think like each decade is pretty much handled it well, or do you think is there a best decade for horror movies?
Okay, so that really depends. So, if you're talking about that's an interesting question and a somewhat difficult one, because when you go decade by decade, you typically start getting into subgenres. So, like in the 80s, you're pretty much going into the slasher genre. With the 90s, you're going into more psychological horror and meta horror. And in the early 2000s, you're going into like meta horror. So, the subgenres are important because they pop up and they can gain popularity depending upon the filmmaker. But when it comes to horror overall as a genre, just where it kind of pops. In my eyes, the most important decade for horror was in between 1930 and 1940. And the reason for that is because the movies that came out, because back then in the 30s, in the late 20s to the early 40s, and then it kind of declined going into the 60s because of the Hays Code, because people were kind of like pushing back against censorship. But in between 1930 and 1940 was actually say maybe 1925 to 1940. They had kind of 15 years in there. That was pretty much the heyday or I would say the foundation for like horror in cinema is what it was. Because there have been horror movies done before that, but before that, when you get like into the late 1800s with stuff like House of the Devil and there was another like The Execution of Mary Scott. So when you start like 1890, you say 1895, 1896, you start getting to that's all that was about, like kind of like showing trick photography. Look at the scary stuff that we can do on camera. That's where the stuff that came out of France. That's where that kind of inspiration came from. Was the French were making huge strides in horror, in showing stuff in trick photography on film. The American directors pretty much picked up really, really quick. And in 1920, of course, you get F.W. Murnau's Nosferatu. The unauthorized adaptation of Bram Stoker's Dracula, which fortunately survived, even though it was ordered to be destroyed. We actually got that movie. But so French and German, German expressionism and new wave, kind of like new wave French cinema was really where it would kind of birth that. But it was 1930 to 1940 when the big American studios, Universal, AIG, MGM, when they really started getting their hands on really putting forth effort. So obviously you have your greats, you have Bela Lugosi, and you have Lon Chaney, and of course
the Universal Monsters.
Exactly, the Universal Monsters, and Claude Rains, stuff like this. So the point was, the reason this is a big important moment or a watershed moment for horror was because all of the stories that Universal was adapting all come from like great literature. So like Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, H.G. Wells' The Invisible Man, so on and so forth. So all of the great literature icons. So we got Bram Stoker's Dracula, Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, H.G. Wells' Invisible Man, so on and so forth. A Creature from the Black Lagoon, stuff like that. So and of course the Wolfman as well, werewolf tales, like all of those tales are ingrained like in our kind of like collective unconscious since before we ever came to it, since before people ever came to America, like started immigrating over here. Those are like going all the way back to like ancient we're talking like hundreds of years going back in Germany and Hungary and all this, and those stories were brought with them, were brought over. So all of the old world stories of vampires, stories of werewolves, stories of witches and stuff, all that stuff came over here. And so Universal took the opportunity to start adapting this stuff for the big screen, and they told these old horror stories that are hundreds of years old in a new way that nobody really expected. And it was like, wow, all of a sudden Boris Karloff is up there, you're like, blah, and we see we can really see it for the first time. And then of course, Bela Lugosi is out there just fucking killing it as Dracula. And so that right there was the foundation for everything that horror today is built upon, was on the shift from telling these old stories that a lot of people had kind of forgotten, that the vast majority of mainstream people had forgotten, because at the time people were working their asses off.
Sure.
Just trying to get from paycheck to paycheck. It was difficult times. You had the stock market
crash.
That
was Depression era.
Yeah, you had the Depression era, and then all of a sudden, here were these movies. And eventually you would be like a quarter to go see them, or like 50 or a quarter to go see them, or like 15 cents to go see them, and bam, there you have it. Before that, you really only had like the nickel like little the little like detective noir and like yellow horror stuff that would get sold that you could read with pictures like comic books, but they'd never seen.
What were they called?
Like the dime store novels and stuff like that. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Or the Penny Dreadfuls. You had those. But nobody had ever seen really anything like that. And when those hit the mainstream, all of a sudden, the horror genre became something that not only was marketable, but was also just... It was marketable because these stories were so important. And so the older generation was like, I remember these stories. And now they get to see them in a new way. A new way they never thought possible. And then you have the new generation going, what is this? And so it took what was new, what was ancient to us, and reinvigorated it and showed us that these stories are still important. And so the 1930 to 1940, I'd say, was the most important decade for the horror genre in and of itself. Because all those old stories were all the old books that people, sadly, just don't read anymore. The vast majority of people just don't read. There's a reason that they are ancient not ancient, but there's a reason that these are literary classics. Because, gone are the days when, Lord Byron and Mary Shelley and everybody would get together on a rainy night, cooped up in a deal, and everybody have like a write-off to see who could come up with the scariest story. Those days don't really happen anymore, unfortunately. But we now have the fruits of those thanks to the film industry. So I would say 1930 to 1940, most important decade.
Sure. Yeah. There's also that kind of birth of effects technology and makeup and stuff like that.
Right.
Like the werewolf, like Lon Chaney Jr.'s werewolf is still iconic today. Imagine, I can't imagine seeing that for the first time without any prior experience of something like that. That would have been...
his transformation, the way they were able to cut those together really quick and make it almost as smooth as they possibly could back then. those tricks were born out of French cinema, out of just like French little short silent films that they were making. Just like if you ever get a chance, you can go on Wikipedia and you can look up one of the early, probably what is considered the earliest known horror film ever was considered to be House of the Devil. Or like, I can't remember what it is in French, but it's called The House of the Devil, and essentially it was about like this warlock who's like moving through this house, and each set is kind of like new trick photography, like, you know, people turning into skeletons and shit like that. And it's really, really short, and it's really cute. You look at it and say, oh, this is cute. But imagine for the time, 1896, when people were watching it, people were, you know, this is scary stuff. Before that was a little film, you can actually see it on Wikipedia. It's called The Execution of Mary Scott. And it was a recreation of the execution of Mary, Queen of Scots, when she's beheaded. And it used a very simple jump cut. It was like the first example of a jump cut done, where you basically bring everybody in, you bring the actor in who was played by a guy at the time in Shakespearean style. The guy leans down to be, you know, executed, and then bam, and then the executioner raises the axe, and then you could see it, unfortunately, the jump cut. And then there's a dummy there, and then whap! Then they cut the dummy's head off, and then the executioner holds it up, and that's it. That's the end of it. So that was one of the first examples of like this kind of trick photography coming through. And then of course, you know, the big studios capitalized on that and utilized those tricks because they had more money to pour into it, and then they advanced the technology so we can get Bram Stoker, or we can get Bela Lugosi turning into a bat, or we get, you know, this lavish set, you know, it's alive, you know, we can get cool stuff, or one of my absolute favorites, actually two of my favorites, Claude Rains at the beginning of Invisible Man, where he's like, ha 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 ha, and he starts unwrapping his head, and he's not there. But he's like pulling the bandages off, you know, he's like, oh, and he's like laughing hysterically, and like that one cop's like, he's all eaten away, you know, stuff like that. And then, of course, one of the ones that just captured my attention was Creature from the Black Lagoon. It was one of my favorite Universal monsters. I never conceived of shooting movies underwater. That blew my mind. It's a camera. How do you get the camera underwater? And he's swimming around, and he doesn't have a scuba tank on, and he's in his friggin' costume. That was like, what? You can do that? It's like, shit, yeah, you could do that. You know? And so you get to do cool stuff like that and convey these monsters in a way. And for anybody who's asking, the Creature of the Black Lagoon was not a monster. He was a victim because they came into his place and fucked with him. So
that's one they haven't actually really revisited. You don't see any remakes of Creature from the Black Lagoon, do you?
Yeah, as far as you asked me, as a remake.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know why that hasn't been touched. The most recent thing about A Creature from the Black Lagoon was in, obviously, Monster Squad. Because they had a creature in that. They had, like, the creature in that, and then they had the Frankenstein and Dracula and Werewolf. But I think that was the last time I saw a Creature from the Black Lagoon, a Fishman. Other than you take Abe Sapien from the Hellboy deals, or you take, you know, like, Del Toro's Color of Water. Was it Color of Water? Shape of Water. Was Shape of Water?
I think
it was The Shape of Water. Yeah. So, but that's just like, but that's not really Creature from the Black Lagoon. So that was just like, you know, a humanoid. It was a fish person. But Creature from the Black Lagoon, you know, obviously, you know, this predatory thing. He's got claws and he's got, you know, fangs, stuff like this. You know, and so I don't know why nobody's ever touched that. Werewolves are indelible. Everybody loves that because it's the internal rage externalized, and everybody can identify with the werewolf. And werewolves just look cool, you know, because they're like, blah. This is why, you know, I loved Benicio del Toro as, you know, I love that Wolfman take. Stan Winston's effects were just amazing. And then, of course, Frankenstein, you know, is science run amok. So, you know, science in the mainstream's eyes, science replacing God, that whole concept. Dracula, you know, not only the idea of eternal life at the expense of other people's lives, but you've got the kind of like the commentary on the aristocracy about those in power and those with wealth and those with access, basically preying upon the lifeblood of the people beneath them, of the peasantry. So the people that work the kingdom all kind of bleed. That's their lifeblood, and then the king or the aristocracy kind of feeds off that. That's where the vampire legend kind of comes from. So all these things are just, you know, indelible. You know, we can always relate to them. You know, whether it's, you know, vampires now like the 1%, feeding off all of us, and so you can constantly, you know, change the aspect of it. But just like the latest vampire film I watched was such a dumb one. It was, but all the vampires in it were all like ultra wealthy celebutards. and essentially it was just, saying all the celebrity that they enjoy is pretty much them just feeding off of everybody else, and then they feel this
it's
lavish
like social
party.
commentary of like the
Exactly,
wealth,
yeah.
the
All-
wealthy.
and unfortunately, the creature from the Black Lagoon really doesn't have any social commentary because those people stumbled in there and found a monster. And so, don't go where you're not supposed to go, but human exploration is all about, so that's what it means to be human. So it's kind of like, whatever. But, maybe that's why people haven't touched on it. I would love to see what they could do now. Like the new Invisible Man by Blumhouse with Elizabeth Moss was amazing, because it was technology. Or like what you could do with this level of technology. That was brilliant stuff. But yeah. Creatures of the Black Lagoon, wouldn't the monsters from Humanoid to the Deep be the closest? Potentially. Humanoids from the Deep essentially was a commentary on basically what we do with kind of like I hate to use the term, but kind of like the refuse of society. Those individuals that are ignored, those individuals that fall through the cracks, because it's the homeless that get affected by the nuclear, the radioactive shit that mutates them into like the fish monsters. So there was more of a commentary, like more of a social commentary in that respect, that there are victims of our society that we don't see, and that we are inadvertently, through our inaction and through our apathy, are turning them into monsters, or we wouldn't even realize it was a threat until all of a sudden it was upon us. Same with cannibalistic humanoid underground dwellers, the Chuds. Same thing. Yeah, it's the same thing. It's essentially, it's like, we're going to dump this toxic stuff down into the sewers or down, whatever, and we're not going to have to worry about it anymore. And then all of a sudden we have mutated, homeless people is basically what they were. So, referred to as the less than dead.
So what are some of your favorite subgenres of horror? You mentioned psychological.
Psychological horror is by and large my favorite because everybody's got the thing, like body horror is one thing. Body horror is the horror that happens to you. It's the external encroaching upon you. So body horror is one thing, whether it's done to you or it's inadvertent or whatever, but body horror is always the external forced on the internal. Psychological horror is always internal. It's always about what the effects of other people are doing, how it affects you internally. And the concept of what you may perceive as real not being real, or what is being fed to you is all lies and you can't trust anything, or that level of uncertainty is one of the worst fears for me. The idea of losing my mental faculties or losing my grip on reality is very terrifying.
Sure.
In that respect, and I think it would be terrifying for anybody. That's why like diseases like Parkinson's and dementia and stuff like this, where people start losing their grasp on things, or Alzheimer's is terrifying. And
losing your memory,
right?
Because I think really we are the sum of our memories. So if we start losing our memories,
then who are we? Right?
Yeah.
And that's terrifying to me, and because it's inescapable, because it's your mind. You can run away from stabby. You can run from that. At least you can run from that. But that's what's terrible, and that's what makes a movie like Wolf Creek terrifying, because Wolf Creek is ostensibly a slasher film, but there's a psychological horror to it because you can't escape. You can't run from that. So so the only way out is through. So the only way to get out of the situation is to literally kill you're forced to meet your attacker head on, which is a terrifying prospect in and of itself. Which is why it's both psychological and that, because then you start internalizing, do I have what it takes to overcome this killer? Can I do this? Can I become the monster in order to survive the monster? There's obviously, and that's Nietzsche there, right there. So that's why I love psychological horror so much, is because it puts us into, like the trolley problem. It puts you into mental scenarios and forces you to ask yourself, what would I do? What could I do in this particular situation? And so you run through those in your mind. Like, I wouldn't do that, but would I? Because trauma and how it affects people, and these are the difficult things. Stuff like Friday the 13th or Halloween. Love them. Slasher genre is a favorite of mine. I love the slasher genre because of what it says about society and our puritanical upbringings. The virtuous girl survives, everyone else dies, and that's important. But psychological horror, because you can never escape your mind. Your mind will always be there unless it's being taken away from you. Either way, that's why Get Out was so terrifying. The deep place is fucking scary, because that's you being taken away, or you being suppressed to the point that you are not yourself anymore. And that's why that movie resonated so powerfully with people. It wasn't just the racial aspect; it was the psychological aspect in that you are being stolen away or locked away in a way, and you can't fight it. That's why it's absolutely terrifying. So psychological horror is always going to be at the forefront.
Nice. What are some of your other favorite subgenres? You said slashers.
So I love slasher films because one, it's a reminder it's a reminder of kind of like our primitive. And I would say primitive as in like ancient, or like like Neanderthal stuff like this. But it's a callback to our primitive thinking when we first came over here, our puritanical roots. Horror in America is way different than horror is anywhere else, and that is simply because America here in the U.S. is so young. We're like one of the youngest countries out there, and so we don't really have the history to inform our horror genre. Everything we have is taken from other people. So everything we have, or taken from other countries and other cultures. So all of your Universal monsters, those all stem from stories from like Germany and Hungary and Transylvania and Romania and the Celtic stuff and Scotch Irish and English. So all of those tales are all transported over here. All the ghosts and stuff like that. All of that comes from pretty much cultures all over the place. So we interpret these things that other people have really grasped for hundreds, if not thousands of years. And so that youthfulness, the only thing we really added to anything was we added the slasher genre. The slasher genre has its roots here in America. I think, and people may disagree, is Nightmare on Elm Street physical or psychological? That is both as well. That's also why Wes Craven has such a grasp on it, because he went for both. He went for the physical. Here's this. How do you overcome it? Well, it's the same thing psychologically. How do you overcome something whose natural state is your own dreams?
Sure.
That's terrifying. That's a terrifying concept. It's the same thing with like Serpent in the Rainbow. Serpent in the Rainbow was, you have voodoo witch doctors and all these bad people, but there's like literally magic involved. Well, how can you fight magic? You can't. And when the sorcerer is using magic against you, how do you attack the sorcerer when you're being attacked by something you can't fight? That's the psychological aspect and the body aspect, because he's like screwing with your mind and he's like sending like monsters and zombies and snakes and shit after you. So the slasher film is important because, and I think people may disagree with me, but the first slasher film in my eyes will always be Psycho. And because that wasn't so much about a psychological horror. That was about there's a person who's crazy and he's like stabbing people to death because he's a serial killer. Norman Bates, straight up first slasher, the first slasher film. And then of course, it gets more and more diverse as you go along. Then all of a sudden, that was Psycho was 1960. And then you have a couple spotty here and there that it really didn't hit until 1974 with Texas Chainsaw Massacre. So 1974, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, all of a sudden, it's this dirty, grimy, grungy, dude with a chainsaw, blah, like this. And then that kind of cemented it, was Texas Chainsaw Massacre. And then, of course, I actually say is more psychological horror than it is body horror, because it just eats people. But it uses but the psychological horror is that you can't trust what you're seeing. That what you see is what you see as reality is not really reality. That it's being obfuscated from you. So that's more of a psychological dread, because it uses what you're afraid of and throws it in your face in order to make you more afraid, so that it can eat you and you taste better. So, but the slasher genre is uniquely American, and everybody else is pretty much glommed off of that. Which is why, if you notice, Japanese, Korean, English, doesn't matter, any other culture out there really doesn't have a handle on slasher horror like we do. But we don't really have a handle on ghosts or, the boogeymen like this, like the classic monsters and stuff, or those classic old tales. We don't really we Americanize them. We water them down. We make them more palatable because we don't have that history. We just don't have it. And so we don't really handle any other genre really, really well, but we handle slasher genre really well because it's inspired directly from our puritanical roots. Virtue will be your saving grace. The idea that those who are good and pure, evil will never overcome you because you're good and you're pure, and goodness and purity will always overcome sin is where that comes from. So
Sure.
the slasher is not so much in itself a killer. The slasher is sin in and of itself, or like because the wages of sin are death. And so they take that idea and they manifest it into the killer, the Michael Myers that has no motive and it just kills, or the Jason Voorhees or whatever. And then good will always prevail over evil. So the virtuous girl at the end is the one who wins. And then of course, and then of course you people play with it. Wes Craven did the meta horror, with Scream, which kicked off the meta horror genre, but still a slasher film. It just turns it on its head. So, but slashers we do really, really well because those are unique to our American mentality.
Nice. Nice. Any other subgenres you want to throw out there or give props to?
So slasher genre is good. Psychological horror is good. Body horror is something that is really, really decisive because the idea of because that all comes down to practical effects and what you could do. But I would say another one I would probably laud is going to be sci-fi horror. I love science fiction. I know you love science fiction, and we're kids who were raised when we didn't. I came up in an analog world. And there was no internet. There was outside, and there was looking at the stars, and and stuff like that. There was Twilight Zone and Outer Limits, and so I love science fiction. I love science fiction and the authors that came along with it. And then of course, when you combine that with sci-fi horror, which is what Lovecraft did quite well. Although he was more of a horror sci-fi kind of because cosmic horror, but. Sure. When it comes down to it, sci-fi is fantastic because it blends so well. Because you can look at science run amok, or science replacing God if you want to go down that road, or because it's all about science fiction is all about exploration and breaking boundaries. And there's always a fear with breaking boundaries because you never know what you're going to find on the other side of that boundary.
Fear of the unknown.
That's that uncertainty of what could possibly happen. So you got movies that really encapsulate is Splice is fantastic. It's just a great recent example of just playing with genetics. And you got Jurassic Park, which is more of a thriller, but what could happen? We're bringing dinosaurs back. How could this possibly go wrong? But of course, it comes down to it. The ultimate in that, and obviously a remake based off the Howard Hawks, Who Goes There, or based off Who Goes There, and then of course The Thing from Another World. You have John Carpenter's The Thing, which I consider to be the ultimate and the greatest sci-fi horror film ever, because not only did it convey a monster that was as terrifying as that could literally be the size of a cell and be as terrifying as it is when it's in its full giant thing form, but it also conveyed science exceptionally well. We have characters that are in a space, it's paranoid like this, but they are scientists. They're scientists and they're tradesmen. So you've got the scientists working around, and then you've got the tradesmen, the mechanic, you got the mechanic who works and everything, you got the pilot. You got people who have jobs where they have to, especially in such a harsh environment, they have to remain in control. These individuals are psychologically tested so they don't freak out, cabin fever, stuff like this. They think through their problems. They don't panic. They look for solutions to everything because they got to be problem solving. When you're stuck in Antarctica and you're cut off from everybody, you need to be a problem solver. Yeah. That's what we got. So we got problem solvers, both from a technical standpoint, I'm going to solve this way, to a scientific standpoint. I'm going to solve it this way, And that was what was so brilliant about that film, was not just the monster and the practical effects of Rob Bottin, who spent a year working those things by himself and almost killed himself from exhaustion, but the way the characters were conveyed were brilliant because there were no weak links in that. Everyone had their particular skill. And so that's why The Thing, that's why Carpenter's The Thing, which it is, it ramped up the horror aspect, but it is the greatest sci-fi horror ever made. So we come down to it. Psychological slasher and sci-fi horror is the best.
Nice. What are some of your guilty pleasure horror movies?
Oh, shit. So... First and foremost, and everybody in the live chat knows, well, virtually everybody knows, Hellraiser 3 is one of my biggest guilty pleasures. Hellraiser 3 is not a good movie. It's not. It's a major departure from the franchise. It's silly. It was intended to give Doug Bradley, to really capitalize on the notoriety of Pinhead, Doug Bradley as a new horror icon, and the story was just off the freaking rails. The movie itself is not good, but I love it because the carnage is awesome. Doug Bradley does an amazing performance, like, I am the way. Shit like that, just like, it's so blasphemous and just amazing. And I crush on Terry Farrell. Terry Farrell was Jadzia Dax, and I got to see Terry Farrell in something other than the role of Jadzia Dax, and so I got to see her in Hellraiser 3. I was like, hell yes. So I watch it for Terry Farrell, and I watch it for Doug Bradley. It's a total guilty pleasure because the movie is crap. The writing is crap. The story in itself is crap. The filmmaking was crap. The direction was shit. But man, you had two really, really talented actors who gave it their fucking all to sell that damn movie, and I can't fault them for that. It's like, it's a paycheck, but fuck, we're gonna have fun with this. And Doug Bradley was having a blast. That whole movie, Doug Bradley was having a blast. So Hellraiser 3, Doom is a major guilty pleasure of mine.
Doom, the 2005 Doom.
The 2005 Doom. I actually went and screened that movie before it ever came out, and that movie just gives me so much joy because I grew up playing, I had my freaking my 386 or the old computer, or a 486. I can't remember what it was. So, but playing Wolfenstein, id Software, man. So it was like, Wolfenstein and freaking Doom. And so I grew up playing that, and then to finally see it on the big screen. And so I was one of those guys who was I was one of those dudes who was like, they're going to do a first-person shooter deal, and it's so free. I go back and watch it, it's like, this is so dumb. But it's fun. It doesn't take itself too seriously, and it's just a popcorn movie is all it is. And then, of course, you got The Rock, who is just like, or Dwayne Johnson, who is just like chewing up the scene every single time he's there. With these most ridiculous lines. He even got he was like, I'm not supposed to die. And then he just was like, this, callbacks like that. Or, of course, like, I need soldiers. Shit, who says that? Okay?
Yeah,
only in the video game movie could they do this, so.
Yeah, Doom was pretty terrible, and everyone hated that first person shooter scene. I love that. I thought that was the best part of the movie.
Oh yeah, the whole thing builds up to that. The whole point of it was so we could have Carl Urban, friggin' what was it? Dang, I was gonna say his Lord of the Rings name, but he was Éomer. So we got Éomer throwing down with freaking The Rock because he hadn't really established himself at the time, and so he's gonna go through and he's gonna kick ass, and of course it was like running through a haunted house with like blam blam blam, and then the pinky sequence and everything. So it's like I said, it's definitely a guilty pleasure of mine. I love going back.
I played Doom back in the day too, and they had the Doom. They had the Doom tropes in it. They had the chainsaw. They had the shotgun. They even had the BFG 9000.
The big really fucking gun. And then of course I've got one round. It's like, oh, who does? Of course, The Rock does, which makes it amazing. And then, of course, the Doom music kicks in. Dun 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 dun. Just fucking amazing. So, total, absolute, guilty pleasure of mine. Do I have any other like really, really major ones?
I'll tell you one. I'll tell you one of mine.
Yeah. Which one are yours?
House from 1986.
Oh fuck yeah!
I love that movie. I don't know why I love it, but I love that movie. It's something about it. It takes itself only as serious as necessary, because there's still parts of it that doesn't really take seriously, and the effects are great. Like Richard Moll's like monster makeup, is awesome in that, and just some of the stuff they do like they do with the haunted house stuff. I don't know. I just think it's super entertaining.
There's so many good ones. Freddy vs. Jason is a guilty pleasure of mine because that all leads up to like the throwdown between, even though Kane Hodder was completely robbed out of that movie and it was an absolute friggin' travesty. But Freddy vs. Jason's guilty pleasure, Graveyard Shift. It was an early Stephen King adaptation because it's just straight popcorn. It was just like basically people go down in a basement and find a giant monster. That's just good shit. House on Haunted Hill, the one with Jeffrey Rush and Famke Janssen and Chris Kattan. That's that one's a good one. What are some other ones? Because other ones either that I like, everybody really likes. Like,
yeah,
you know,
there's like lots of ones in the 80s.
yeah. So I mean, no, pretty much everybody digs because I mean, I don't know. I liked Freddy's Dead, although some people really didn't dig it, but I dug it. I like what they were trying to do with that.
The Wraith. Do you consider the Wraith a horror movie?
I do consider the Wraith a horror film. I do, and because it's revenge horror is what it is.
It's a slasher movie with cars.
With a car,
yeah. Where the knife is a car.
So I would say, I would agree. I would say the Wraith is definitely a horror film. Other films that come to mind.
It's also kind of a Crow before the Crow.
It kind of is. Crow. Absolutely,
it is the exact same story. It's kind of interesting.
So, but like other stuff, like you mentioned the Wraith, and I suddenly was thinking like James Brolin in the car. The car is a favorite one of mine. Oh yeah, I would say House of Wax is kind of a guilty pleasure, I would say, because you get to see Paris Hilton get a spike through the head, which is fantastic, or you can get a piece of pole through her head, which is just great. Because it's the only reason I watch that. Oh yeah, Aaron Reese brings up Ghost Ship because everybody. The only reason to watch Ghost Ship because the movie is terrible. The only reason to watch is for the opening 5 minutes. When the wire and just like kills everyone on the deck of the ship. So because that was just like that's how you open a movie. It's like that's how you do that. Oh wait, no, Deep Rising is definitely a guilty pleasure. Deep Rising was a guilty pleasure because it was so goofy. Tom Berenger, Famke Janssen again, because everybody's so goofy in that movie. And then of course you had the dude who was Benny in the Mummy films, and then so many like big name actors now. And then you go back and you're like, what? You were doing this movie? But Deep Rising is so silly, and these giant monsters, and then it's also a guilty pleasure because it was supposed to be a King Kong prequel.
Was it?
Yes,
wow.
It was supposed to. Literally, Deep Rising was meant to literally move into. That's because at the end of the movie, they wash up on shore, and then all of a sudden there's something like coming through the woods, and they're on this this big island. There's a volcano erupting, and there's big monsters everywhere. It was supposed to be literally a prequel going into King Kong, but the plans for that fell through, so they just dropped it, and now it's just this kind of standalone thing. But Deep Rising was because it's so utterly goofy and. I
haven't seen that movie in a while.
And what they do with physics, like the physics of explosions or like fluid dynamics, does not work that way. It's like this doesn't happen this way. It's not the way this works. And big giant slimy monsters like that from the bottom of the ocean coming up can't do that out of the water because they're so big and they're heavy. They have no bones. They literally go. But yeah, you're gonna have me believe that they're like, yeah, we get. It was like no. This is so goofy, but hey, it's like a straight suspension of reality.
Nice. Hey, you want to watch some animated horror stories?
Sure, yeah, whatever you want to show, yeah. Someone brought up Angel Rivera brought up Seven. Yeah, Seven's one of the great psychological ones. Yep. It was one of the good ones.
Actually, I wouldn't consider that a guilty pleasure though.
My ex, like a long time ago, 1995. That was the first movie we ever saw together. Like we went on a date. It was like I think I was 15, and I think she was about to turn 16, so we were underage, and I managed to get us into Seven. Nice. And so we went to. So it was like one of the first movies I ever saw, like on a date. It was wild, but yeah, I love that movie. Brad Pitt, Morgan Freeman, Kevin Spacey, just like John Doe. Yeah. Woo.
All right. So we are going to. Yeah, we're going to do some horror stories. 6 allegedly true, middle of the night horror stories.
Can you blow it up a little bit?
Yeah, we can.
Oh, there we go. Yeah.
What's that? All right.
Middle of the night horror stories.
I want to make sure our volume's turned up.
This happened in 2000.
Can you hear?
Yes, I can.
Okay, good.
4. I was a new college graduate starting my career in healthcare at a hospital 2 hours away from where I grew up. The hospital I worked at was huge.
That is a huge hospital. Sure.
That looks like a very big hospital, and obviously a
Yeah.
creepy setting because you get surrounded, like this place is surrounded by trees with no leaves on them, so it's like
Yeah. It's a very, very big rectangle.
it looks abandoned in that. Actually,
no
it kind
parking
of
lot.
looks like the medical building from Shakma.
There's no parking lot. Where are people supposed to park?
That's a very good question.
And it's empty. There's no ambulances or anything.
A level 1 trauma center.
Oh,
I work in a highly specialized area. There were only 2 other people at the hospital with my licensure. That's important because we spent a lot of time working alone in our department and had to stagger our shifts for coverage. I had the early shift. I arrived at 5:45 in the morning. Staff parking was several city blocks away from the hospital, and they sent a shuttle to pick employees up.
Okay, so they have no parking lot. Okay, I guess that makes sense.
The lot was surrounded.
residential houses very close to the hospital, but
Yeah. Oh, this is several blocks away because you said it was several
okay.
blocks. The staff parking lot was several blocks away, but there's no patient parking lot. Also,
by an urban forest.
urban forest.
Okay.
The city tried to leave as much green space and trees as possible. There was nothing else near the parking lot at the time. Since I arrived so early, the shuttle service had to be called when I arrived. The call button was located at the shuttle stop, meaning you had to leave your car to communicate with the dispatch.
Cases is they just dispose of the cars because once you come, you can, it's like Hotel California. It's like a Hospital California.
I was always creeped out because even though there were parked cars, there were never any employees in the lot at the time I came in. The overnight shift didn't change until 7 a.m. A few weeks after I started working there, I had settled into the shuttle routine and gotten more comfortable. At this time, cell phone service was spotty at
She's got that zombie walk going on. Zombie shuffle.
best, and I didn't own a smartphone, so it wasn't very reliable. One afternoon, when I returned to my car, I found a note left on my windshield.
Oh, okay, I know where it's going.
It read, "Hot and sweet you are."
You knew it was going there. That someone was gonna describe her like a hot, like a chicken.
No,
nuggets sauce.
the note under the windshield is a classic. Essentially, there's an urban legend about, and some would say it's not really an urban legend. Some would say it's actually a real thing, but it's based upon reports. And that would be that people would come out to their cars in lonely places or places that seem to be deserted, or where they seem to be by themselves, and then all of a sudden they find a note under their windshield. When they stop to pick up the note and they read it, that it essentially puts them in a vulnerable position because they're not paying attention to the things around them, and they wind up either getting grabbed by human traffickers or grabbed by a serial killer, something of the nation. The note underneath the windshield is a classic horror trope because you're in an environment where you need to kind of have your head on a swivel. It's dark. There's not a lot of light. There's places to hide. You don't know if you're alone or not. And so obviously going out to parking garages or going out to large parking areas where there's not a lot of security and you're kind of wide open, we're kind of like a wide open space where you could be hit from different angles. People are taught to be aware, be aware of your surroundings. A note under your windshield is a quick way to divert someone's attention away so that they're looking at this and bam, you can hit it from the side.
Okay, so someone's gonna come out of the darkness and try and grab her. Is what you're saying, right?
Commander Darklight, was the note written by Yoda? Hot and sweet you are.
Yeah, he's describing her as his favorite sauce from McDonald's for dipping chicken nuggets.
I glanced around and didn't see anyone. I was perplexed, but not really frightened. Another week passed. I forgot about the note until one afternoon I returned to my car and found a flower in the windshield wiper.
Okay, have you heard about the flower underneath the
It's the same kind of trope. It means it essentially what it's utilized as the trope that somebody's aware of your movements and you're not aware of them. So it's the stalker. It's the stalker trope, or the God, like the Watcher is essentially what it is. Sure. Individuals watching other people, not aware of those. So, like, variety of films will, take pieces off of this. Like, another example of this would be like Phone Booth. Is that villain in that piece with Colin Farrell trapped in Phone Booth was a villain who essentially just watched people and just like wondered about them and like found bad people and then punished them in certain ways. So this is always about the eyes that are on you that you're not aware that so it's to be aware of your surroundings. That's the cautionary tale. Is be aware of your surroundings, because you never know who is watching you from afar or has eyes on you and you're not aware of it. So it not only speaks to be aware of your surroundings because there are people out there that do bad things, but it's also a cautionary tale about your behavior. And so what it reminds people is that there could be people watching you when you least expect it, so that you're not seen doing something untoward that could potentially be used against you. This keeps people kind of in line. So that's the purpose of stories like this, or like urban legends, or what they're kind of born out of, is you never know who's watching, so be on your best behavior and try to be aware so that people don't take advantage of you. So this is both a warning and this is both a cautionary tale and a warning about your own behavior. Because if somebody sees you doing something untoward, that they can then use that against you, or they could, or do something of that nature. This has its roots like going all the way back. Classic story. Yeah.
So yeah, you think this probably might not be a true story, huh?
I am going to guess because the elements are all there, and it's pretty much nothing but the elements. I'm imagining that this was written, that somebody wrote this story, and they took elements, because there have been stories about about a girl who walked out to her car and found a note on her windshield, and then immediately, remembering something her mother told her, and then immediately looked around and saw like a nondescript van, like slowly driving towards her position. And then the minute she noticed the van, they picked up speed and they drove off. Sure. So that was an event that actually took place in Texas. So these things, because she reported it, and then it hit the news because the same descriptive van was involved in an attempted kidnapping where the person got away. So they were using that tactic. They were targeting young women who, if it was one person or multiple people, don't know, but it was somebody. They were targeting a woman by putting something on their windshield to distract them. And then while they were distracted, they would then grab them. So in this, it's just it's like but even those, it's hard to say. So in this respect,
we think the climax is going to be someone rushing out of the woods or the darkness to try and grab her.
It's either that, or it could be somebody waiting in the car.
Okay, let's find out.
Yeah.
Wiper. And another note. This one read, "I really love your dimples. I could make you smile
forever."
What the?
He's like,
I'm gonna cut you a new smile.
Yeah, I was thinking he's like a taxidermist, like, I'm gonna make you smile forever.
Heck, I had just moved.
Oh, look at that face.
Yeah.
To this town and didn't have any friends beyond the other two people in my department. I didn't know anyone else. I did feel creeped out this time and began feeling like I was being watched or something. Early in the mornings, I would park as close to the shuttle stop as possible, buzz the dispatch, and then wait in my car with the doors locked. I often imagined I heard shuffling noises like shoes scraping through the gravel.
It's you. That's what you're doing. You're just shuffling.
See, and that's the terrifying thing. That's why this is such a cautionary tale, and why it's passed down through the ages, is because it's not only that, because now she's hyper aware, and hyper awareness can be as bad as lack of awareness. Because with hyper awareness, you start seeing threats where there are no threats. And so if you were constantly, and hyper awareness can be taken advantage of as easily as a lack of awareness. And so because you're in one victimizable state, and you're immediately heightened into another victimizable state, because you wind up trying to like locate the threat to the point that you blunder into the threat. So that's why situations like this are so dangerous.
And I couldn't see all the way to the dark corners of the lot. When I returned to my car in the afternoons, I carried my pepper spray just in case. I told my coworkers about the notes.
Oh, what's going on with this other broad? Like, look at those. Look at those.
I don't know, but this grudge looking chick.
And they told me I should tell security.
Yes,
I
obviously.
felt a little silly, but I made a report.
Bro, look at this shady-looking security guy.
Plot twist: it's the security guard.
Maybe. Could be.
Security said they would keep an eye out, whatever that meant. I stopped parking in that lot, opting instead to find parking on the street nearer to the hospital where there were other people around. Things went fine for the next few weeks, until one day I got another note. This time, it was on my car one morning, outside my apartment building.
Oh no! What do you think the note's gonna say?
Probably something more. It was something more. It's obviously going to be something more aggressive because it's the third one, and good storytelling events occur in three. So she's gotten one that's a bit more aggressive. So this one is going to be even more aggressive, and obviously someone who's obviously following her. So it may not be the security guard. It could still be the security guard, but at this respect, it likely because it's at her house.
It's gonna say something about watching her in her bedroom or something.
Or something of that nature was like that, but likely it's either, if it's not the security guard, which is a possibility, but now that it's at her house, I'd say it may be a neighbor. But there's a number of ways that this could go. It's somebody who's obviously been following her, is aware of her schedule. So, and because she moved cars and she moved to a place that's more visible, now it's someplace here. But because this was somebody leaving something on their car and none of the neighbors noticed and nobody was aware, and nobody said, like, somebody's left something on your car. I saw somebody leave something in your car that looked weird. It means that they may be seen in the neighborhood. They may be known in the neighborhood. So this could be a neighbor. So is my thought. So, but yeah, well, I guess we'll find out here in a sec.
In the same scribbly handwriting, it simply read, "Don't be shy."
No, it says don't be so shy.
Don't be so shy.
I was so confused.
The ellipses of fear.
What did this person want? Obviously, they were following me, and now they knew where I lived, and probably knew I lived alone. I contacted the police. There wasn't much they could do, but they did make some safety recommendations and said they would patrol the neighborhood more often.
Yeah.
I took a self-defense.
What?
It's classic stuff. Yeah, they can try and increase patrols in that area, but there's very little they can do unless an act actually occurs. So,
yeah, you can't arrest a note.
Right.
Defense class and was hyper aware of my surroundings.
Oh, there's a hyper awareness.
Yep.
It was worse not knowing who I was dealing with. A few weeks later, a woman was found assaulted and murdered in the trees behind the employee parking lot.
Oh no!
They caught the guy a couple days later. I recognized him. He was a contract painter who had been working in my area.
See, yeah.
The hospital.
Somebody that was expected to be there, and if they happen to be nearby, be like, oh, they're doing work in the area. We're used to seeing him here, so if he happened to, they won't be paying that much attention to him. That means that he could leave a note on a car in front of somebody's house, and nobody would notice. Is because they're expected to be there. So it's likely somebody who is nearby. Not a neighbor, obviously, but someone who was working nearby. So, yeah.
Hospital had been remodeling our department, and this painter would come in early, around 6:30 a.m.
They should have been able to spot him because of how evil he looks. Look at, he's got the grudge eyes going on too.
He does. In fact, I actually think he's related to the security guard. Look how similar they are.
Maybe,
those guys could be brothers.
Yeah.
I made coffee every morning in the break room, and he would come in to get a cup.
There you go.
We made small talk a few times, but never any red flags.
The appearance of the guy wasn't a red flag. I know this is this is an animated story. Blah blah blah.
Then it came back to me. Sometimes he would call me Dimples. I shivered. Good morning, Dimples.
Did he say it like that? I mean, if he said it like that.
Good morning, Dimples. Okay, do you want to yeah. It's not endearing at all. It's like you want to add them to your collection. So no.
I was shocked that he had literally been right under my nose for weeks.
Literally.
I had been totally alone with him on many occasions, and I never suspected anything.
With like the dark circles eyes and the
I don't
bloodshot
know
eyes.
know for certain that he was the one leaving the notes.
Once he get to like
But
the
they
lead, he's like, I'm gonna leave it.
Stopped
Sorry.
after he was arrested.
Haha.
Anyway,
Anyway.
stay safe out there, guys and gals.
So yeah, it's the classic stuff. And it said another woman was attacked because she obviously was caught unaware because it's the same thing. Yeah, that's that. Yeah, he was power walking. It was like, haha, to leave a note. So that just goes to this is the animation. I don't want to slight the dude's animation, but yeah, I say there's probably elements. Obviously, people being attacked in parking lots, especially at night. Parking lots, especially deserted ones, are particularly dangerous because you're out in the open. You can't be if your head's not on a swivel, you could be taken advantage of, especially by somebody who is bigger than you. So this is a cautionary tale. So I would say that probably elements taken from, of course, all cautionary tales, all stories that are designed to do this to keep you aware of something.
Yeah.
They're either to warn you about the perils of something. They all take elements from real life. It's usually one story heard from here and it's combined with another one, so on and so forth. But yeah, that's it's what it is. It's literally, someone trying to catch you off guard is what it's about, because they've done something to distract you and then they'll capitalize upon that. Typical predator behavior.
If you really like my content and want to support the channel and subscribe to recommend it.
All right. He's got way more subscribers than I do. He doesn't need me to chill out. We got a McDonald's story.
Uh-oh.
When I was in college, I worked the night shift one summer vacation. I was 19 years old and an average-looking female. I wasn't enthused about having to work a job over the summer, but it was the only way I was going to be able to afford tuition.
Look at this. The drive-through.
Like
Drive-through line goes off in the middle of fucking nowhere.
and this terrifying neighborhood that everybody is in. It's like, but hey, why the
Working
tree
night
is growing
shift.
out of the sidewalk, I'm not sure. But
This McDonald's is like the only place in 100 miles. Look at it.
Was probably the weirdest experience of my life. It was at the McDonald's drive-thru. I still remember my first night on the job. This lady came in and was talking to someone while she was waiting for us to take her order. She sounded extremely upset, and she was screaming at the top of her lungs.
Right, yeah, she looks like she's screaming.
yeah,
It sounded like it was
finger.
Yeah.
directed at someone
She doesn't have the Karen hair, though.
in the back seat. I immediately assumed that she was abusing her children.
She's screaming at the top of her lungs. Obviously, she's abusing her children. That makes sense.
I'm a psychology major, so I naturally pick up on stuff like that.
Sorry,
She ordered 3
It's
Big
just-
Macs and 3 large. Naturally pick up on stuff like that. She ordered 3 Big Macs and 3
3 Big
large
Macs.
Cokes. My intuition has been wrong. When she pulled up to pay for her meal, she was completely alone. I was honestly a little startled. Why would this lady be here ordering this much food and screaming in her car if she was alone?
And it looks like she's going through the drive-through backwards, because like the window
because
is
she's paying
facing
through
the
she's paying through the
passenger?
passenger side, which is odd. But yeah, I mean, but this, like you look at the setup, it's like somebody just like they're in their car, they come through the drive-through, they order a bunch of food, they could be taking it home to people who are waiting, and they could just be venting in their car about whatever, or this could be unchecked mental illness. There's no, and of course, the fact that she came through the drive-through backwards is probably a red flag, but we're gonna let that go on
Yep.
for the sake of the animation.
I couldn't wrap my head around the situation. She was otherwise polite. She was nice as she spoke to me and paid for her food and left.
So she held up a card
Looked like a
in the
car.
previous scene, and now the
cash, but
is cash.
She even told me to have a good night.
okay.
She had been the only customer we had in a probably 45-minute window.
That's because your restaurant's in the middle of fucking nowhere.
Yeah.
And after she left, I saw some of my coworkers laughing at me. I asked, "What's so funny?" And he told
Oh, there's the Karen figure again.
me that it was my first encounter with Schizo Susan.
Oh.
They told me that she regularly did stuff like this and always showed up at all hours of the night to order seemingly too much food. She was always yelling at people in her car, but there was never anyone actually in her car. They didn't actually know her name, so they just started calling her Schizo Susan. They told me that there were occasional nights when she was the only customer to come through the drive-thru at all. I found it extremely unnerving.
What? Why?
Why?
It's just
It's
just
like
a
why?
polite. She was otherwise polite except for screaming.
I can tell you, I put myself through college the first time working the graveyard shift at a Whataburger, and I had all manner of people come through. I had people throw stuff at me. I had women show me their boobies. I had drunk people, high people, all manner. I've had creepy people. I've had whatever. I'll come through. It's the drive-through. It's the middle of the night. It's like 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the morning. Everybody just wants freaking taquitos and hash browns and into GTFO. So I saw all of it. I never once had a person come through that made me go, oh. Especially not that face. I didn't make that face. Where she's got
I immediately
eyes as big as her head and a Glasgow smile. So
started wondering what was wrong with this woman. About a week went by. She came in every night, just like they said. And in between speaking to me to order her food and picking up her food, she was always yelling at someone. I couldn't take it anymore. I had to know what was up. So I formulated a plan. I was just going to ask her who she was speaking to. Play it off like I thought she was talking to me. It was the best I could come up with without seeming abrasive. I remember it being a Friday night when I decided I was going to do it. I had chickened out a couple of times, but I figured that since
Chicken McNugget Day out.
I don't work the weekends, may as well try something new to end my last shift for the week. Well, the night that I did it, I listened in to her screaming for a few more seconds than I normally did. You see, I can listen to what people are saying through the McDonald's speaker without them necessarily knowing that I'm listening. If I don't say anything, they would never know.
They would never know. Surely fast food workers do this all the time, I'm sure.
Oh, they do. Absolutely do.
I normally never did this because it's kind of frowned upon. I'm pretty sure there's some kind of rule against it. But I listened for maybe 20 or 30 seconds. I listened for long enough to know that she was yelling at someone named Darian. When she was in the middle of saying something, I interrupted her and said, "I'm sorry, ma'am, were you speaking to me?" She just replied, "No." Crap, I thought to myself. I knew that I had to try something else. I asked her if Darian would be ordering with her. Then she went silent. It wasn't an entire minute, but she didn't say anything. After the second time,
Their eyes are upside down. What's going on?
Those are the eyes of someone who says, "Shit, I have to kill another one now."
Yeah. And my secret's out.
Like, oh, crap.
time of asking her if she was still there, she let out a banshee scream. It was the loudest thing I have ever heard in my life.
Wow.
It
that's pretty
really
loud.
hurt my ears. The McDonald's microphone system is already pretty loud, but when someone screams into it, trust me when I say that it is the most unbearable thing you have ever experienced.
Unbearable. The plate of the McDonald's drive-through.
This is true.
I was also surprised at how long she screamed. She had one deep, loud, guttural scream going for like 30 entire seconds.
30
In the
entire
moment,
seconds.
though, I was scared for my life. I also got really worried that I was going to lose my job. I felt really guilty for asking,
This person's
like it was
obviously
my
very
fault
young.
for setting her.
What?
This person is very young. It's
Yeah.
like really young. So if they're like, this is probably just out of high school. It's like, oh, I've upset. So it's like, oh crap, it's all gonna come down on me. It's like, if you were like our age, you'd be like, it's the freaky lady in the drive-through, and she's like freaking out. I was like, I don't know why she's screaming. I didn't make her scream. What the hell? So, and of course, if you lost that job, you wouldn't be as
Her off.
Whatever.
In retrospect, I don't think I really did anything horrible to her. Literally just asked her if the person whose name she was screaming just a minute ago was also going to be ordering food. She didn't actually say anything when she screamed. It was just kind of a violent and guttural screaming. I was really taken aback there for a minute. How the heck do you even respond?
Why is she bouncing?
I don't know. She's like, that's like some scanner shit right there.
Yeah, her head's about to explode.
To that? I asked her if she wanted to continue placing her order, and that's when she just drove away. She really floored it and drove way faster than she should have.
She looks like it.
And as she drove by, I saw her face looking at me through the window. It must have been only a split second that I could see her, but I got that one really good look at her.
She's driving through a Hanna-Barbera cartoon.
She looked extremely distressed, and as if things couldn't get any weirder, the microphone system stopped working correctly the rest of the night. I think she screamed loud enough to break something in it.
Uh-oh.
That was hands down the weirdest thing to ever happen to me throughout any jobs I've ever worked. And this weird lady just disappeared after that. She stopped coming to McDonald's altogether. I asked some of my other coworkers how long she had been stopping by for her nightly visits, and they all said that it was for as long as they can remember, which probably meant at least a year.
That's a short memory.
Yeah.
I felt somewhat guilty for pissing this lady off so bad, but I think it is safe to say she probably needs some serious mental help. I haven't worked at McDonald's in a long time, and I don't ever plan on working fast food again. I just hope that wherever that lady ended up, she got the help that she so desperately and obviously needed.
Yeah, I agree with Steven. This was pretty underwhelming.
Yeah.
Pretty underwhelming for a
Crazy person in drive-through. That's like par for the course.
I was 22 and lived in my parents' house while they had left South Africa to work abroad.
Wait, is this a house in South Africa?
Looks like the same neighborhood to me, but
This doesn't look like a South African house. Of course, I don't really know what South African houses look like, but I don't know. I don't think this really looks like one.
My grandmother moved in with me to help out, as I was a single mother while still studying in university. In the end, we helped each other because she was also on oxygen due to chronic lung disease.
So how was Grandma supposed to help her at all if she is relying on bottled oxygen? Like, she should just be barely able to live.
yeah, she's probably there so she can keep an eye on the kids while she's at school and stuff like this. But Stephen Alley says this has true stories. How do they verify it? I'm kind of curious because there's no real details in it, obviously, and
Yeah,
even
they just take their word for it.
Right. It's kind of like, I think that I'm thinking that these are probably stories that were probably pulled off of Reddit or something of the nature, and that they've kind of cultivated. It's no different than like channels like Chills, like that have the stuff that he does. So
Yeah,
but I'm pretty much thinking it's like like the first one was just a basic cautionary tale. The second one was just kind of like a weird drive-through experience.
yeah.
And now here we have the super old lady in the house, and of course,
Yeah, I'm pretty sure they just pull, like, people say, like, oh, this really happened to me, or this is a true story, and they just pull it off of Reddit and read it, yeah.
Growing up in South Africa, we are taught from a very young age that it's important to make sure all doors are locked and windows are closed at night. Being a very private person, I would always have my curtains closed. People can be extremely nosy here. Well, one night after a long day of studies and simply being a mom.
What is she curling that baby rattle? Was she working out? I don't know.
We locked all the doors and shut the windows, pulling all the curtains closed to settle in for the night. Now, my son was not a great sleeper and would often wake up throughout the night.
I would too.
After
There were,
dozing
like,
off-
balls in my bed.
Yeah.
Later that evening, he woke me up asking for his
He's doing the karate chop. He's like, ah.
bottle, and I decided to check the time, slightly blinded by the TV's light. I sat up, rubbing my eyes. 10 p.m. Something wasn't right. I felt like we weren't alone.
Uh-oh.
As I peered through the doorway into the passage, I could have sworn I saw a dark shadow
Oh, it's the sheep.
almost crawling across the tiled floor.
That's not crawling.
I'm imagining things. I must be. Shrugging it off, I pass my son his bottle. Still, I swear I'm hearing sounds. Like someone coming up the stairs this time. But that's in the opposite direction. The railing creaks, and I'm about to get out of my bed to check, when a face peeks around the corner of my bedroom door. Gran, is that you? Expecting her to be needing help with something, so I reached for my phone to create light, as I had already switched the TV off again. A man storms into my room and
Oh no, he's power walking to her doom.
He's got business.
Yeah.
grabs my phone before I can hide it. I'm in so much shock, yet I know exactly what is going on at that moment.
Okay.
Take whatever you want. Please, just don't hurt us, I say calmly. He puts his index finger to his lips. Shh. He's just standing there, as though he is waiting and watching guard. Then suddenly,
What? we got like a fucking disheveled stockbroker, and we got Eminem, and I don't know who this guy, some bank employee or something. I don't know. And then we got M4s.
3 other men rush in and ask
It was 2.
question after question. Where's the safe? Where's the weapons? Where's this and that? They were all armed, and I had no idea what they had planned for us. I just couldn't keep up, trying to answer all their questions. Why would I, a single mother in a house with her child and grandmother, have a weapon? In all honesty,
That's a good question.
I've never even owned one. They took everything, and then insisted on taking my car keys. I tried telling them I couldn't remember where I had put them, but they stuck a weapon in my 2-year-old son's face and asked again,
Oh, those bastards.
where are the keys? So I told them where I thought I had left them.
Is that the selector switch on the buttstock?
I think so.
For some reason, that's weird.
After going through all my things, taking what they wanted, and were then ready to leave, I'm presuming they were throwing everything into my car for the getaway.
Everyone drives the same model car in this universe.
Yeah.
The one guy chose to stick around in my room a little longer. Give me a kiss, he whispered. Oh no,
Oh no!
I was shouting in my mind, still trying to stay composed. He put out his hand and took mine. Then the others called for him, and as he pulled away,
baby
I dug
Steve
my nails
Buscemi.
into his hand and scratched. If I was going to do anything, I was going to get DNA off one of them. If no one could see what was going on in my home, I would
He's just letting her scratch the shit out of him. He's like,
Yeah.
whatever. It doesn't really bother.
find a way to get justice. Don't scream, they said, and ran down the stairs.
Power ran or power walked more like it.
I ran down after them and screamed as loud as I could for help from the neighbors as they sped off in my car. Standing
Wacky waving inflatable arm flailing tube man.
outside in the pitch black, calling for anyone to help us. And yet no one heard. It felt like hours had passed. No phones, no laptops,
No landline?
no means of contact.
No, I guess they ripped up all the telephone poles too.
They took everything, and I couldn't even call my parents. To this day, these men have never been caught,
Oh no!
and I wonder if I had my curtains open, perhaps someone might have seen. People were still awake. I am now 35, and since that night, I refuse to go to sleep without my curtains open and at least one light on.
What's the light gonna do?
To let people know that let people outside know that people are awake. So it's there's obviously a cautionary tale here, but this, classic home invasion story. It's in South Africa, so I could see it because there's a lot of gang activity in South Africa and a lot of crime. So I could see that, but it's hard. This obviously any homeowner would be afraid of people just barging in and doing stuff like that. So I can say I can see why it'd be scary. I think that the manner in telling these stories, but I also think that this guy's it doesn't have much for delivery is the problem.
No.
It undersells the entire thing. If he had a little bit more inflection in his voice and just kind of played with it and played with the pacing, because all of his pacing is and so, but I mean, I'm not accusing him of being a voice actor. That's a different thing. There's a way to tell that story. Then you can bring your voice down really low and be like, I heard what I thought with the steps creaking. The house itself is very old, built roughly 75 years ago, and not much remodeling has been done. So I recognize from a young age, or from growing up in the house, I recognized how each step creaked, and there was definitely someone on the stairs.
And then 3 men came barging into my room.
But it was so dark because I had flicked the TV off and my eyes had not adjusted to the lack of light. And then I heard my door creak open. Instantly, I was aware, but I realized I couldn't see who it was until my eyes adjusted enough to see a face peering at me from the darkness. A face I didn't know. Something of that nature.
Yeah. Maybe we should do some of this kind of reading ourselves.
I kind of dig it.
We could.
Being a voice actor, I love the opportunity to do that. I got it. That was what was cool about doing the audio, the audio excerpt from my horror novella. Is I got to play around with that, play with the tone, and play with the strength of it, and of course play with voices, the voices of the characters, and just have fun with it. And it's kind of intensive because as you're reading, you got to go back and you got to kind of, it's like, oh, I didn't really like how that went, and then you do multiple takes in order to get it, but you got to keep the tone consistent. So it was a challenge to do it myself, to do it solo, but it's a lot of fun. Then of course you can see it's weird because he's got this kind of like, literally while it was playing, it sounded to me like you were typing in the background. When in actuality, I think because it's a story, I think it's supposed to be like a fireplace crackling in the background.
Maybe, yeah,
that's what I think he's going for the kind of.
It's rain.
Or it's raining. It's raining. Okay.
Yeah, it's a rain sound.
Gotcha. So it's not the popping sound of like wood. It's rain on like a roof. So, but it's because it doesn't change in intensity. It doesn't go up and down to kind of fill the gaps. It just kind of like is there as white noise. And so but the presence of that white noise, you can easily dismiss it, but it's always going to hamper your investment in the story because it's always going to be something that's going to be distracting your ears away from what's going on. So. Yeah.
Most people don't even believe me when I tell them, but I have a job where I work from home. People in my area mostly work with
It looks like he's a former lumberjack. Look at that beard he's got going on there. Just needs a plaid shirt. Maybe the guy didn't have the budget to animate a plaid shirt, kind of like the Money for Nothing music video.
Cars or in the medical industry. There aren't many jobs where I live. Thankfully, I was able to land a decent paying job that let me work from my home office. It definitely comes with its struggles, but it is hands down the best job opportunity available to me right now.
And you could be a YouTuber
It isn't
too.
always perfect.
What?
It's saying you could be a YouTuber too.
Sure.
Get after it.
It definitely comes with its pitfalls. Sometimes you have to sit at your computer even when there isn't any work to be done. It's also very easy to get distracted. But I think my
That's
biggest
YouTube.
Yeah, you got YouTube, and
YouTube.
Facebook, and
Sometimes I'm sitting here, I'm like, I need to be watching this movie or doing something. And I'm like, okay, back to work.
problem has to do with the house itself. It's kind of creepy. The house itself is an old Victorian.
why does it have street lamps like
I don't know.
right next to the house?
There's one in the yard too. So
Yeah.
Like really old. We're talking mid 1800s.
Oh, yeah, it looks like it. It looks like a.
are all the people in
A
this
family-
video half human, half raccoon?
Friend.
Because the circles under their eyes.
Yeah.
Owned the house and sold it to me for a very fair price. Basically gave it to me. I was
Oh, have we heard this one before where somebody gets something sold to them for basically nothing, like a car or something
Something
like
that
that?
actually, yeah, buyer beware.
Yeah.
super
the story.
excited because it meant I got a nice big house to live in by myself along with my girlfriend. I'm a natural loner and don't really care for social interaction. So I had a nice big house all to myself and girlfriend and a job where I worked from home with very minimal social interaction with other people. That was basically my ideal life. But the house's age meant that it was going to be scary at times. And I don't mean with ghosts or anything like that, but sometimes I hear the house settling or making noises that I can't explain.
Must be ghosts.
I've actually had quite a few instances where I'll be sitting down and doing some work, and then out of nowhere, I hear a noise that I just can't rationalize. I go exploring throughout the house.
Well, see, that's just poor storytelling because he says because he knows it's old, and he's not talking about ghosts as he said it, but he said because he knows that old houses make weird noises as the house settles because they're old. That's what they do.
Yeah.
So as you know, they the wood stresses with the increased temperature from sunlight, and then at night when that radiative cooling causes the wood to when the wood compresses or I say
Whoa, you mean the cold moonlight?
And so, yeah, how old houses make weird noises. Well, when there's wind or with radiative cooling, they make weird noises with the house settling at night and stuff that you're typically not. And they're typically making these noises during the day as well, but you're not aware of it because of all the activity going on. But at night, when there's nothing going on and you're trying to go to sleep, or if there's not a lot of things distracting, you'll be more aware of these things. Just like that's what it is. And so he knows this, and then turns around and says, I hear noises that I can't reconcile, after he just said that he knew that the house makes weird noises because it's old. So it's just odd storytelling in that respect. This is why I'm inclined to think that it may be just pulled from somewhere and made up, or pulled from other stories, because that's very, very strangely written. And the fact that if he wrote these down, then he didn't see that, which means he didn't pick up on that continuity issue. So he was like, oh, so he just took it from somewhere else or wasn't really paying attention to it. Sorry, that's the writer in me. That's the nitpicky writer in me that notices little things. It's like, well, hang on a sec. If you can't reconcile it, then why did you say that you could reconcile it beforehand? So, especially when you already ruled out ghosts. I'm not talking about ghosts and stuff. And I know it's old, and I know it makes a lot of weird noises. But it makes noises that I can't reconcile. Well, then if it's not ghosts and it's not the supernatural, and it's old, makes noises, then if it's like animals and stuff, that's specific noise. So I don't know. So
yeah, literally, it just grabbed off of Reddit. I'm sure.
Yeah.
It just grabs them off Reddit and reads them.
Yeah.
However they're written.
Find that nothing has changed. It's as ominous as it is frustrating. I did what just about anyone else in the world would do. I started to use background noise to drown out the disturbances. First, I tried those quiet instrumentals on YouTube. You know, the ones that last 5 hours and they're supposed to put you at ease or something.
Oh, those ambiance videos. They keep popping up in my recommendation. YouTube recommends, and every time I'm like, don't recommend channel. Don't recommend channel. Just getting it.
Yeah, 3Ron. Yeah, I don't know if it's 3Ron or Ron or Braun or whatever, but their name. But I recognize this. It might have just been poorly written, where he meant that there was another noise that could be recognized. Agreed that it most likely was just badly written. Is all it was. It's just that like little things like that stand out to me as a writer myself, just because I'm aware of that and uses of grammar and tonality and pacing. And how you basically kind of set the stage for your scary moment. So, like, we've already said it. It's in a house, and it's a big house. It's old. There's only 2 people in it, and he pretty much sequesters himself there because he doesn't like to go outside. So we've already got this kind of weird situation that is conducive to paranoia.
Yep.
Because someone who is socially anxious doesn't want to go out. They're very familiar with their surroundings. That's what they want. They want that familiarity. The strangeness of things stands out to them because of things that they're not used to. And this could all be conveyed in a particular way, like especially if you're used to the sounds of your house settling and you know what weird sounds are not supposed to be there. But then again, if you can't reconcile it, that means it's a sound that you've never heard before, which means that you could reconcile animal sounds. You could reconcile like people trying to get into your house, like somebody using a doorknob or somebody slamming a door, something like that. All of these can be reconciled, which means that he's hearing something extraordinarily weird after he already ruled out the supernatural. Because I'm not talking about ghosts and stuff; those things don't exist. But there's some weird noises here. So it's clunky writing and not well done. So
yeah, it's anticlimactic.
yeah. And all it does, as far as just trying to tell a scary story, it's 3Ron. Thank you, 3Ron. And so as far as just trying to tell a scary story, this just goes to the presentation. It's just a matter of you got to be aware of what you're setting up and aware of the parameters of your story and what's going to go into it to make it scary. So obviously, just these are little things. And of course, once you've read a lot, if you read a lot, these things stand out to you like glaring thumbs. But the important thing is they take you out of the suspension of disbelief. So it's difficult to do that because I'm suddenly aware that this was written by somebody and likely is just something that was made up. So
it didn't really work for me because I couldn't get my computer to be loud enough to drown out all the noises.
Oh no.
It was also not very good at keeping my attention.
Okay,
there was one week where my work was really slow, and
so much that you put some headphones on, right? But like, what kind of this place sounds like it's falling apart all around him. So, or there's somebody frogging him, which is something entirely different. It is actually something that I often am kind of scared about. The reason for that is for those who are not familiar with what frogging is frogging is the act of breaking into someone's home and then living there without them knowing it. So you have to break in without making them aware of the break-in. Then you have to live in the house and ostensibly use their facilities, eat their food, do whatever, and live in their place without them knowing it. Typically, people living up in crawl spaces or areas in the house that you don't typically access. So frogging is a scary thing, and there are people who literally film themselves doing this. I think there was one dude who got in trouble because he lived in someone's house for 3 weeks.
Wow.
And until he was finally found out. And there was that epic video of the dude who realized that food kept disappearing out of his kitchen. And his girlfriend was like, I swear I'm not eating the food. And he was like, he knew it wasn't him. So he was like, okay. So he set up a camera in his kitchen to try and figure out what the hell was going on, and it turns out there was a woman living in his attic crawl space, and it was a tiny little space you wouldn't expect, little storage area.
Damn.
And there was someone living there. And then one night he caught himself on camera. The woman came out of the kitchen, or came out of the little crawl space, went through the fridge, ate some food out of the fridge, used the kitchen sink to go to the bathroom.
Whoa.
And then obviously made a noise. He walked in. And then she hid. So she hid underneath the kitchen table because it was dark. He walked in, was like, got himself some water, left, and then she went and scurried back up into the crawl space. And so that was documented, and he, when he reviewed the deal, was like, holy crap. So he called the police immediately. The police came out, and they pulled her out of the crawl space. So and they don't know how long she'd been there because she wouldn't tell them. So she could have been there for like weeks. Who knows? But yeah, there's like a weirdness there. And yes, there was a movie that was the newest Helen Hunt film called I See You. Was basically about someone who was frogging the family that was living there and causing weird things to go on in the house. So, but yeah, frogging is a real thing. So maybe this is a frogging. Crazy. Maybe this is a frogging story.
Maybe. I guess we'll find out here in a minute.
There wasn't a whole lot to do. I still had to sit at my computer, though. There was an understanding that I was allowed to basically do anything I wanted as long as I was available to my coworkers if something came through that needed to be done. I didn't quite know what to do with this time and just started watching documentaries on YouTube.
That makes
sense.
It
actually was pretty fun. I learned a lot. So that next week when things started picking up again, I just instinctively turned on a documentary. I wouldn't be able to have all my focus on it, but it was a lot better than having some ambient noise. It actually helped distract me from the sounds of the house. I guess I just didn't have enough mental focus energy to notice any of the other sounds going on around me, if that makes any sense. Well, it had been about 2 weeks of me watching documentaries while I worked. Everything seemed to be good, until one Friday morning. I start work at 8, and this must have...
What's going to happen?
happened around 10. I was sitting at my office chair working while I listened to a documentary about a 9/11 conspiracy theory.
Oh, that's good shit to listen to there.
That's just fantastic.
When all of a sudden, I heard an abrupt banging noise coming from upstairs. Like I had said, I hadn't been distracted by any noises for a while by this point. So, the fact that I noticed this noise meant that it was probably serious. My fight
I don't know, maybe you're right about the frogging.
or flight kicked in. You might laugh at me, but when I work, I keep a knife next to me.
He keeps a knife? He keeps a fucking...
what is that, a fillet knife? Come on, man.
Yeah. Well, it works. That sounds reasonable. That sounds legit.
I ran upstairs with the knife and looked around for any suspicious noises. The banging had stopped, and I didn't know where it had come from. I knew what section of the house that I heard it from, but there didn't seem to be anything out of place. I stood there for a few moments, and then I heard it again. It happened right on the other side of my door. I immediately braced myself for there to be some kind of animal or something trying to get in. I didn't really know what to expect. I opened my door to see that the screen door had not been properly closed.
What, now he's outside? Wasn't he, like, upstairs?
I'm not 100% sure, but all of a sudden, yeah, I guess
My girlfriend didn't close it all the way when she left for work that morning. It was also pretty windy that day, so it was just going back and forth, causing a banging noise when the wind got bad. This was kind of a breaking point for me. I didn't want to live my life in constant paranoia and fear of some kind of attacker coming into my home. We live in a safe area. There's never been a serious threat, and I have run around my house with a knife way too many times now.
You notice how fast he's going because you always run faster with a knife.
Yep. As you should. You should always run faster.
You always run faster with a knife.
Like fun fact. If you're running with a knife, the faster, the better.
Kind of stupid.
Yeah, so for all the Counter-Strike fans out there.
So I made a decision. I was no longer going to assume that someone...
He should be doing like the Scooby-Doo thing where he runs in like one door and then he comes out another door.
Yes, just like until eventually, like...
If I animated this, that's what I would have done.
...was breaking in, if and when I ever heard a sound. I put the knife in my dresser in my bedroom and decided that I was just going to be into work while I was working.
That's not a knife,
except for my documentary, of course. So, there I was the next week. It happened on a Wednesday. I was sitting in my office doing exactly what I had set out to do. I was working, ignoring the noises, and listening to a documentary. I remember the exact part of the documentary I was on when I heard it. The sound was the loudest sound I had heard in the house up to that point.
Oh no.
At first, I reassured myself that it was nothing and that I need to fight against this paranoia.
Yeah, because when you hear the loudest thing that you've ever heard, it's obviously nothing.
Right.
The sound continued, and I couldn't take my mind off it. After about 5 minutes of listening to what sounded like rummaging and walking, I went upstairs to check. Bear in mind, I didn't have any weapon on me, and I was expecting some kind of reasonable explanation. When I got to my kitchen, I saw that the front door was wide open. The cabinets were all open, and there was a strange man
Oh no, frogging!
rummaging through them. I didn't notice until after the fact, but he had been eating something. I remember screaming at him. I don't remember what I said. It was something to the effect of, What are you doing in my house? Then he just ran off. Didn't say a word.
What would you expect him to say? Oh, hello, welcome to my house.
I actually was almost presented with a similar scenario, but I wasn't home at the time. So, but my wife was, and the apartment complex had decided to paint the banisters on the because we lived on the second floor, and the apartment complex was having all the railings, all the balcony railings painted. And one of the painters, while they were doing our balcony, one of the painters let himself into our apartment. Wow. And he went in. He was like, "Oh, the door's unlocked." So we went in to go use the restroom. My wife was asleep in the bedroom. We had a tiny little 1-1. And so to get to the bathroom, you had to go through the bedroom. And he walked into the bedroom while she was asleep. And wow. She didn't have her glasses on. And so she woke up, was like, "What?" And she was like, and the words I remember her were like, "What the fuck?" And he was like, "Oh, sorry." And he like ran. Oh, no. And so he ran and like went out back towards the balcony. And I was in California when I get this call. Somebody walked into one of the painters walked to the bedroom, walked into the apartment, and I was like, "What the?" Because my mother was like, when I told my mom, she was like, "Thank goodness you weren't there." And I was like, "I know, right?" Because with this situation, I wouldn't have said anything. I would have spear tackled the guy right into that cabinetry. It's like, what? It would have been on like Donkey Kong, like
right.
Because I'm one of those. It's just like one of those situations he's like finally. I've waited my whole life. It was like I've trained my whole life for this moment, and I just would have been dumb because it would be stupid. I would have literally just spear tackled the guy who's like with no thought whatsoever as to like, is he armed? Does he have a blade? Does he have a gun? It's like I have no idea. Is he like crazy or sick or something? And I've just been like, oh, it's brawl time.
All of a sudden, the Mortal Kombat theme.
Exactly. Like, the Doom music would kick in. The dun 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 dun, and I would have just just been all over him. So, because I'm an idiot. Because I would have been an idiot back then. But
all right, let's see the thrilling conclusion.
He took a loaf of bread with him.
Oh, you bastard! You stole a loaf of bread.
If that would really depend upon the bread. If you like, because we usually buy 2 loaves. My wife likes wheat, and I like honey wheat. My wife likes white, and I like honey wheat. And so if he'd stolen my honey wheat bread, I'd have been really pissed. I'd been like, because I like peanut butter sandwiches, just peanut butter. I just like it's like a snack I have when I'm working. Is peanut butter sandwich and a Diet Coke. And it's just like it's comfort food. And so if he had stolen my honey wheat bread, I would have lost my shit. It was like that one time I had my car broken into. I had my car broken into one time in my life, and it was when I used to drive this old minivan, and they broke into my van and they stole like some audio equipment. They stole a speaker, they stole a microphone, they stole my CD player because at the time you had to use a CD player that you hooked into your stereo system so you could listen to your CDs. They stole my CD player. My CD had one of my favorite band. I think it had one of my Metallica CDs in it. And so they stole a bunch of stuff. But the worst part was they stole my last pack of cigarettes. I was freaking furious because like of all the things, it wasn't the $300 speaker in the back. It wasn't the $150 microphone that they stole. It wasn't my CD player, that was like, set up in my car. It wasn't any of that. They stole my last pack of cigarettes. And I think and they left the lighter. So I had my lighter
Oh man.
and no cigarettes. That was even worse because it's kind of like now I got my lighter in my hand and I'm really stressed out and I have no cigarettes. I was livid that they stole my last pack. I was so pissed because I was young and I was broke and I was working in a movie theater and
Right.
it's like just living paycheck to paycheck like all like kids do. And I was just like, someone broke into my car. Look at all the stuff. They stole my last pack. Oh, I know. That just made me mad as hell.
Dick move.
Yeah. He stole
But I
my
don't think he
artisanal
took
wheat
anything else.
bread. I'm fucking furious.
Other than what he had eaten before I came upstairs. I reasoned with myself that he must have been a homeless man or something. I don't know why else you would steal
Isn't that the same knife from his
So
bedroom?
it's obviously a collection.
a loaf of bread from a very ordinary looking house.
Like who makes their slices their bread with a fucking fillet?
with a K-bar.
This was the worst thing that could have happened. On some instinctive level, it had proved all my worst fears right. There was some kind of danger in my house.
That you needed
And
to
of
get a security
course-
system.
Yeah.
It was the one time when I didn't have my knife on me.
Ah.
What were you gonna do? It's like stab the stranger
Yeah.
to death? It's like, give me a break, dude. Come on. It's like you caught someone in your house. Obviously, no. It's like all of your fears suddenly coalesced. Why didn't you lock the door behind you? Because that's habit for me. If I'm walking in the house and I close the door, it's literally muscle memory. Lock the door.
Yep.
That's just like someone else mentioned in the live chat. Who was it? Who mentioned it? It was 3Ron said that part was true. I locked the door without even realizing it. That's why it's like he's like, and I always double check before I go to bed. Just like my dad did. So like my dad kind of ingrained in my head. Before you go to bed, check the doors. Make sure you didn't accidentally leave something unlocked. So I check the back door, make sure it's dead bolted. Check the front, make sure it's dead bolted, and we're good to go. That's pretty much it. And we always leave the hallway light on in case you want us to get them to go to the bathroom. Because out here in the rural area, it gets really dark. So we leave one light on and we make sure that all the doors are locked. So just because unfortunately, even out here super rural, there's a lot of drug addicts and there's a lot of homeless people out here. You'd be surprised. It was kind of shocking. But yeah, you just make sure. It's just habit. And so if he'd had this habit, which is weird for someone who so obviously has such social anxiety,
Yeah.
he'd want to lock his door. And where's his girlfriend during all this?
I don't know.
I'm
Maybe
kinda
she's at
curious.
work or something.
Why didn't she lock the door when she left? Is
She's
kind of curious.
inconsiderate.
I lucked out that he didn't try to hurt me or anything,
What is that?
I'm gonna stab you with this bread knife.
but it was still horrifying to see nonetheless. I just work at a local coffee shop now. It's the only way to stay sane.
What?
I had no idea.
What? That does not make any sense. So, I used to work at home, like a nice job working home, where I don't have to interact with people because I don't like people. But now the only way to stay sane is to work at a coffee
To
shop,
work at a coffee shop.
like where tons of people would come in.
Right.
That does not make any sense at all.
Okay, hold the fort for just a moment. I gotta run to the restroom.
Okay. All right. How's everybody doing? Are we enjoying the scary stories, or are we finding them not very scary, or are we, what do you think of the animation quality? Let me know. And Doctor Who says at least he didn't do it in the kitchen like the other guy. I don't know. That wouldn't be good. And 3Run, was there a bag with Nutella? Good question. Good question. We don't know. But yeah, let's see. The animation is better than I could do. Yeah, it's probably better than I could do also, but probably not very much. I've never actually done animation, but this animation's not really that high quality. And Casey says the animation is pretty scary. Yeah. The 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 movements and of course the weird faces and things like that could be a little scary. Could be a little scary. But if we do this again, which I would like to, it being the Hollywood or the Halloween season, we'll probably find another channel with maybe some different animation. See if it's any better. Maybe the narration is a little better. Doctor Who likes that it's simple. Yeah, sometimes simple is good. Sometimes simple is good. Let's see.
All right.
All right, JL is back with us. Still stabbing the air.
Before I start this story off, this was about a year ago, and though I do have some thoughts that this was sleep paralysis,
Oh, so you're going to deflate the story right at the beginning? Don't do that. Don't take the tension off from the beginning of your story. That's just writing 101.
am leaning more towards the idea of it just being a nightmare. What makes me think that it could have been sleep paralysis was the fact that I heard my brother go to the bathroom. And when I woke up, he was coming out of the bathroom, but I could have just heard the bathroom door close in my sleep, and my mind included it in my nightmare.
Could be.
Totally possible.
Could very well be.
Since it is a common occurrence. During the time of which this occurred, I was asleep in my room and my door a little less than halfway open. I felt awake, and I was asleep on my left side. To give you a quick layout of my room, as it is relevant to the story, my bed was centered against the wall.
Oh, yeah, this is like a hotel room, it looks like.
While my door is in front of my bed, all the way to the right of the front wall. To the left of my bed, I have a mirror, which allows me to see my door even if I am facing away from it. As I had my eyes closed, I heard my brother walk into the bathroom and shut the door, making the area outside of my room dark, since the only source of light that was illuminating the hallway was closed off. Suddenly, from my mirror, I saw a tall, lengthy woman walk up to my doorway. She looked drenched, and her skin was a grayish color.
Oh no, it's the Grudge.
It's more like The Ring.
Oh yeah, the Ring. Yeah, that's right. The Ring.
7 days.
Since it was dark, I couldn't make out too many details, but all I know is that I was terrified out of my mind. I tried moving, but of course, I couldn't. I couldn't even make out the
What?
Sounds like sleep paralysis, night terrors. Yeah.
smallest noise. All I could do was hope that my brother would walk out of the bathroom and this dream or sleep paralysis episode would end. I squeezed my eyes shut, not wanting to see the thing for much longer. This was when I didn't have carpet in my room, so the sound of her dropping to the ground was even more audible than it normally would have been.
Well, that's weird.
It almost sounded like someone dropped a huge piece of meat on a
Flap.
hard floor, with the exception of the sound of her bones cracking when she did so.
Whoa, what does she have? Like
Okay.
Rolex syndrome, like a Joker from Mass Effect? Where?
I'm thinking, yes, somebody watched The Grudge and then had a sleep paralysis episode.
My breathing became rapid as I heard her crawl on all fours toward my side of the bed, almost inhumanly fast.
This is some Grudge Ring shit, yeah.
Kept my eyes shut, fearing that if I opened them, it would take long to get over the horrifying face that I would see. All I heard for those few seconds was breathing
Oh no!
and my heart beating in my ears. This was in a whisper tone. Open your eyes.
We've been trying to get in touch with you about your extended car warranty.
Out of nowhere, I was snapped awake and let out a small scream as I thought the woman was
A small scream? Like what? What's a small scream? Like,
still in the room. But she wasn't. There was no one by my bed. The bathroom door opened and my brother peeked into my room, confused. I didn't have to say
you bastard! You've been watching the Ring again, haven't you?
a
Sup,
word.
brah?
And he just switched on the light for me and went back to his room. But I stayed up for a few hours after that, being too scared to go back to sleep.
You think you watched the Ring again?
It's way too much. It's like obviously, drop down, crawl out on all fours, bones cracking. This sounds very much like The Grudge, and like the description, the wet. She's all wet, or this could be The Ring. Either one is the same kind of deal. Either it's Kayako or Sadako. Doesn't really matter. But yeah, this the Onryu story. And I obviously either watched the film or this is just lifted directly from it, and it's combined with the sleep paralysis, night terror kind of thing. Although typically it's weird because with sleep paralysis and night terrors, it's typically shadow people, or a pervasive sense of dread, like something is coming up on you, or like getting closer and closer and closer when there's no actual real threat that you can really see or make out. So it's just like this either pervasive sense of dread that's constantly creeping up, or it's shadow people that are nearby, or they're moving through the room, or they're just standing nearby, and then every time you look away or you look back, they get closer or stuff like that. So that's the most common. But seeing something like this, it sounds like someone took The Grudge or The Ring and they just put it into a sleep paralysis story.
Sure.
Terrified, I would see that same woman and hear that same voice. Open your eyes.
We've been trying to reach you about your car's extended warranty.
We're back at McDonald's.
Working at my local McDonald's
and we got a different narrator. Yeah.
For 4 years now, and it's one of the.
Is this like Eeyore narrating?
This sounds like his voice, but it's lowered.
Yeah.
Like he played with the audio.
Yeah.
Because the cadence is the same.
Yeah. It's just been pitched down.
Yeah.
Most annoying jobs I've ever had.
Almost sounds like an Elcor from Mass Effect. Like.
This also looks like a McDonald's that's attached. It looks like a McDonald's that's attached to another building. So,
yeah.
Yeah.
It does. Like, terrifying expression. Oh no. There's another thing happening.
People coming in left and right and through the drive-thru with orders piling up was honestly enough to make the average worker irritated. I sure as hell had to go through it all, and there would even be times where I couldn't finish up customers' orders.
It sounds like he's trying to do Chills.
If you've ever worked at McDonald's,
have you ever seen that channel?
No.
So there's a channel called Chills, and he sounds very much like he's trying to emulate that. But Chills has a very, very unique cadence to his voice and the way he says lines. So back it up a couple of seconds.
If you've ever worked at McDonald's, you get where I'm coming from.
Okay, pause it. If you've ever worked at McDonald's, you get what I'm trying to tell you. That's how Chills does his stuff. Now that's a terrible facsimile of what, because I haven't listened to Chills in forever, because he started just doing videos that he started just narrating shit he was pulling off of Reddit. He used to do stuff that I think he wrote himself. Or he would like critique like ghost videos on the internet, stuff like that. And they were pretty good. But then he just started reading stuff off Reddit so he could churn out the content faster. And I didn't, and I was like, okay, this is just getting kind of boring, because he would tell stories that I knew had been debunked, and he was passing them off as like, it was the same thing that who's that other guy, Matthew, bald head, beard, Canadian,
Santoro.
I think Matthew Santoro, yeah, and he'd always be like up in the camera, is just like.
Yeah.
And this story, like, okay, so that dude was doing the same thing. He's just reading stuff off the internet that had already been debunked and trying to make it into scary stuff. And Chills started doing the same thing just so they could churn the content out faster. But Chills has a very unique cadence. And I loved his presentation when his content was like deep, and I was like, oh, this is really, and he's got a really weird way of delivering the information. And it was like, because it made it even creepier, and the fact that he's a rapper is kind of weird too. So, but yeah, I can see that this guy kind of dropped the pitch in it, and he's trying to do sort of the same thing. But Chills, yeah, he's almost impossible to emulate.
This happened around a year ago, right before the pandemic hit, and I was working overnight shift on front counter. I usually work in the kitchen on overnight, so I had no interactions with any customers until then.
There's nobody in the restaurant at all, too. It's like the most empty McDonald's.
It's just like, yeah, okay, that look right there, that's the look of all McDonald's employees' faces. Doesn't matter what shift, doesn't matter if you're on third shift, first, or whatever. That is a perfectly encapsulated look at what it's like to work for McDonald's. It's like, this is, because that right there is the look of a man who's saying, this is where I've ended up. This is where I am. Look at this shirt I'm wearing. I earned this.
Yeah.
I was working a 7-hour shift, which was a usual overnight shift for us. It was around 9 p.m., and I had just finished putting in a customer's order when I noticed a man talking to a young boy near the play area. Yes,
Oh no, what's going on?
we were still one of the few restaurant chains that still actually had one. The man is kneeled down to the little boy's height, and right away the boy seemed very uncomfortable.
I guess so. Look at that motherfucker.
Hi, Jimmy.
I
You like
dis-
movies about gladiators?
You ever seen a grown man naked?
dismiss it as the boy probably having a rough day with who I assume was his father trying to calm him down. I remained focused on putting in customers' orders and try not to interfere with whatever was going on. Suddenly, the man grabs the boy's arm and they're heading in the direction of the front door that leads out into the parking lot.
Oh no.
I'm going to make you into a Big Mac.
At that point, I
He likes his
couldn't keep my
McDonald's
mouth
fresh.
Oh no.
So bad.
Oh.
shut and was about to say something when I hear someone yell, "Hey,
Raise the roof.
what the hell are you doing with her son?" Just then, the mother comes out of the restroom and the man is petrified. His face was pale and his eyes were as big as saucers,
Oh no.
and tried to cover it up by saying, "Oh, this is your child. I'm so sorry."
Okay.
Sorry, I mistook your child for my child.
He looked lost, and I was just trying to help him find his parents. His mumbles and incompetent use of wording clearly gave away as to what he was actually trying to do. The mother gave him an uncomfortable smile that had "Stay the hell away from my kid" written all over. Police were called, but I wasn't sure if he was caught or not.
Why is the police written backwards on that? I know that he took the image, he just flipped it so he could put it on the other one. It's just, it's like, come on,
But
why
you
didn't you
can flip it. You can cut this out.
why didn't you just take it, like, put it over there? I think he took the same car and he just flipped the car and he put it on there.
Yeah, he did. He just
That's funny.
He just mirrored it.
Yeah, he just flipped the car over. Yeah.
But the dude was working at McDonald's. He should have known what was going on because he was right fucking there.
Yeah.
Oh, that's the end.
That was it. Okay, the cop showed up.
Yeah. Not very scary. Not very scary. But yeah, it was fun though. commenting on it and making fun of it, tearing it apart.
It comes down to it. Yeah, the horror stories pretty much they run on the same tropes. You know, the same thing that going back. If you go way back, like Grimm's fairy tales. Grimm's fairy tales were all like the original stuff. I'm sure that most people in the live chat are aware that the origin stories for a lot of stuff like Cinderella and Snow White and all the stuff that before they got Disneyfied, is that those stories were really gruesome. Little Red Riding Hood, because they were all designed to be warnings to the kids that they were being told to warn them of the perils and the dangers of either engaging in particular behavior or doing certain things. So, or whatever. And so they were all designed to be cautionary tales, be like, this is what you don't do. It all goes back to the stories we used to tell each other, the humans used to tell each other around the campfire in order to keep kids safe, or in order to, reinforce particular behaviors, and using fear as a reinforcing technique. So, fear is ubiquitous. It's through time. It's the one thing that is literally a genre born out of the things that are just that is born out of the things we use to survive, just to live. And so the genre itself was born just out of that necessity. Like, we need to make each other aware of these things. We need to do these things. And that's where your genre is born. So
definitely. All right. Well, I'm not going to take up any more of your time. I had a great time talking with you, JL, as always. I had a great time watching videos. We should do another video watching stream. Again, before Halloween, just to...
Oh, sure, yeah. And of course, we could look at some security footage, look at some like ghost debunk, see if we can debunk some ghost stuff, see if anybody's actually caught footage of the paranormal, which I doubt, because it's why the camera's always such shit. It's always like these crappy Target brand security cameras that are like overlaid compression errors. It's like, come on, guys, what are you doing? But it's fun, it's fun because some of them are creepy.
Yeah. Thanks so much for coming on my channel and hanging out with me. I, of course, would love to come on Bridge the Divide anytime you want me to hop on.
Absolutely. I'm doing a live stream, because the live streams are pretty, I've been doing a few more live streams than I have been doing creative content. It's because I'm currently doing this Face of Horror contest that I'm involved in.
Oh, yeah. Talk a little bit about Face of Horror.
So, yeah. All right. So, Face of Horror is, and I'll tell you what I can do is this. I'm going to copy this, and I'll give it to you in the private chat. This is the link.
Yep.
And so I was, this is weird. So Facebook has all kinds of stuff on it. You occasionally get ads and stuff. And I saw this thing pop up that was for Face of Horror. And I was like, what the heck is this thing? It was like, will you be the next Face of Horror? And I was like, why can't I be the Face of Horror? Because at this point, I've co-hosted this podcast. I created and co-hosted this podcast. Been running it for like 4 seasons now. I created the horror film database. I've 600 movies that we've deep dived. I know the horror genre, so I was like, why not? I could be the Face of Horror. Let me just take a stab at this. What is it about? It's a fucking popularity contest is what it is. But so I was like, okay, so it's pretty much just getting people to vote for you. But I will say this: the prizes are amazing, and it actually benefits something. It benefits something that's actually kind of near and dear to me, and something that I really, really support. So I signed up for it, and it entered me in. I got a text message saying you are entered in the Face of Horror contest. So essentially, what this is that faceofhorror.org and Room Morgue magazine and the B+ the B Positive Foundation, which is the Andrew McDonough Foundation, teamed up, and they are running this contest. And the winner of this big popularity contest will win like $13,000, a walk-on role in an independent film, a 2-night stay at Buffalo Bill's house in Philadelphia, and which I think is just awesome, from Silence of the Lambs, and then of course go head to head with horror legend Kane Hodder in a Room Morgue photo shoot. And that photo shoot will be at the Buffalo Bill house. So I was like, that's pretty dang awesome. Kane Hodder's involved, and it's a bunch of money and everything, and I was like, this is friggin' amazing. So I was like, I got to sign up for this. So I signed up for it. I get entered. And essentially what it is that you get people to vote for you. And so if you go to that link that Prime just put in the chat, if you go to that, you'll see my profile, and I am currently a quarter finalist in this thing, which means I've made it through 5 rounds of voting to get to where I am right now. And if you scroll down, it asks me some questions like, tell us why you would make it to the end of a horror movie. What's your favorite horror quote? How would you use the $13,000? And it's like, my favorite horror quote, of course, is you got to be fucking kidding. From John Carpenter's The Thing. It's my absolute favorite. It's like that is the quintessential, horror line. You got to be fucking kidding. It's like, that is that right there. And it's like, not surprised.
Either that or welcome to prime time, bitch.
Welcome to Prime Time, bitch is a great one from Friday the 13th, from Nightmare on Elm Street Part 3 from the Dream Warriors. This is your big break in TV. So, but yeah, I decided to join it, and you can see I've made some pictures of myself. It took to be interesting and be cool. So I got like a picture of me as Captain Spaulding and a picture of me as Mick from Wolf Creek, a picture of me that I inserted of myself into the movie The Descent. I recreated kind of like the Blair Witch deal. So I've done some cool stuff, and it's a lot of fun. So what this basically is you can vote for me by going to that link. Now, right now, it's on a little bit of a hiatus. Voting will resume on Monday at 12 noon Central Time or 10 Pacific Time. And so, if you go to that link, you'll see it. It'll say like voting resumes Monday, October 17th at 10 a.m. Pacific. And it'll decide from that point on. Right now, they're doing a little like kind of like small round, like a 2-day round of voting for all the people who came in second place, and then they'll decide. Then all the second place winners, all those winners, will then join all the first place winners, which I was one of those first place winners in the next round, which is the Hellraiser round. And then we'll just keep going from there. So we got there's 9 rounds. And then there's 7, 8, 9. 3 rounds left. So starting on Monday, October 17th, there are 3 rounds left. Round 7, 8, and 9. There's the Hellraiser round, the Apocalypse round, and the Final Cut round. So hopefully I will be first throughout all of those. And the way you can help me do that is by voting for me every single day. When it starts voting, you can vote once, and then 24 hours later you get another. So it's 1 free vote every 24 hours. So you vote, 24 hours, throw in another vote. But that's pretty much it. That's simple. All you need is a Facebook account in order to do it. So here's the best part. You can vote more, and you can contribute more votes by making a donation to the Be Positive Foundation. I have looked into them. They have a fantastic track record. 100% of the donations go directly to them. Rue Morgue and Face of Horror, they don't take any of that. So it's a big thing helping them out, which is really, really cool. They're the largest financial provider for families dealing with pediatric cancer. And their website is if you check out their website, which is bepositive.org, really amazing foundation. So I was like, this is cool. I could help raise awareness for a good cause, and maybe I could win a prize and go meet Kane Hodder up in Philadelphia. I think that would be badass. Yeah. And of course, my fellow co-hosts and I with Week in Horror can raise awareness for the show. Everybody wins, which is it's kind of an amazing opportunity. So we put it together, and so far, all of the people out there that have voted for me have helped me get to the quarterfinals, and so now it's just about keeping me in first place all the way through to the end, and the final round will be decided in November. So nice. Look for future live streams where I will be announcing. I will make notifications everywhere, and for anybody who's been following around, I apologize. I know that everywhere that I'm a mod, like every channel I'm a mod in, that when they go live, you'll see me broadcasting this link to go vote. And I promise you, I know I'm spamming, I know it's annoying, but I appreciate all the support and all the votes, and I promise you it's temporary. Once the contest is over, that you will not get any more of these from me. I absolutely promise that. But it's kind of the nature of the beast. But yeah, if you go to that website, that prime link, faceofhorror.org, it'll take you to my profile, and then you can vote for me there. And it's a lot of fun. And I think it'd be really, really cool to go and hang out with Kane Hodder and get, do a photo shoot. And then, of course, a walk-on role in an independent film, which I think is pretty badass as well. Yeah. So all kinds of cool. Plus $13,000 that we can then really ramp up things at Week in Horror, get some stuff produced. There's so many options. It's going to be a lot of fun. But yeah. Yeah. That's awesome. And 3 Ron said, speaking of Hellraiser, what did I think of the new one? I loved it. I absolutely loved it because I'm a huge Clive Barker fan, and I love that it really paid tribute, or it really relied upon the source material, was more true to the source material than the original Hellraiser. I really loved it, and I'm absolutely crushing on Jamie Clayton because she knocked it out of the fucking park. She did so well. So
Nice.
I thought it was amazingly done. A hell of a lot better than Halloween Ends. But I will digress on that on the next episode of Week in Horror.
Sure. Look forward to that.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Yeah. So anything else you want to get out to the viewers? Anything else you want to plug? Any other announcements you want to make?
Well, that's pretty much it. I mean, you can follow me, of course, at my channel, which is Bridge the Divide. That's my personal channel. And as a matter of fact, I will do this for... Oh,
It is in the description of the video.
oh,
already.
cool. Yeah.
Yep.
So you can follow me in my personal channel, which is Bridge the Divide, which is pretty much social commentary on, irrational arguments and irrational beliefs and the irrational behaviors that follow. And of course, you can check me out at Week in Horror, which is youtube.com/Week in Horror, which is the podcast. We do the live show every Wednesday. Or if you want to check us out wherever you listen to podcasts, just Google, Apple, Spotify, everywhere that there is a podcast. I found every platform I could possibly get us on. We are on it. So you can go and check out Week in Horror at any one of those. That would be fantastic. But other than that, just look for new content on my channel. Be there for the live streams, and you can maybe win some trivia prizes at Week in Horror. And of course, vote for me in the Face of Horror contest come Monday. Don't worry, I'll be around to notify you about it. I'll be there reminding you. So, but thank you all. Thank you, Prime Red, for having me on. This is an absolute blast, and thank you to everybody in the live chat for hanging out. This is a lot of fun.
Thank you, Jail. And all of those links are in the description for the video, so you can check them all out there. And thanks everyone so much for joining us today. And I hope you had a good time as well. And we will see you all next time.